Immortal Cultivation with the chip. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226, The Useless. Continuing to fly calmly, Chen Mo secretly prepared a powerful magic trap to trick this ignorant sword puppet. According to the analysis of the chip, he found that the intelligence of this sword puppet was extremely low, but its ability to track prey was extremely strong. No matter how Chen Mo changed the direction of travel, he would not lose it, and he walked through every place Chen Mo passed accurately, not an inch more or less. In some places, the distance can be shortened by the shortest line segment between 2 points, but this sword puppet did not have an idea to change the route. Therefore, after half an incense stick of time, Chen Mo and this sword puppet still maintained a distance of nearly 10 miles. Since you are so mechanical and rigid, you should taste the power of Yan Mo Swamp. After half an incense stick of time, Chen Mo's magic buried in the middle of the road had been fully stored. When the chip calculated that the sword puppet had stepped into the trap, it gradually reduced the flapping frequency of Yinling wings. Most of Chen Mo's mind was also transferred to the on-the-spot performance of the sword puppet, and he was even ready to kill it immediately and wipe it out. The spirit eye magic that was arranged in advance near the Yinmo marsh also gave real-time feedback on the sword puppet's response methods in front of Chen Mo. Finally, in the blurred aura imaging, a sword puppet with a blurred face and blurred limbs appeared. Its eyes were still as bright as a mirror, shining in the dark forest, but it did not notice the hidden murderous intentions around it, as if it was blind. The sword puppet still mechanically repeated Chen Mo's route without any change. The chip observed for a moment, but due to the lack of data, it still could not reveal what means it used to track Chen Mo. But its death was approaching, so there was no need to care about this reason. The sword puppet floated through the central area of the Yinmo marsh. The spiritual energy mechanism that Chen Mo had set up in advance detected the unusual fluctuations of sword energy and exploded instantly. The soil under the feet of the sword puppet instantly turned into a quagmire, and scarlet blood bubbles emerged, gurgling up and touching the sword puppet's blurred feet 3 inches off the ground. Only the magic designed by the chip can be so sensitive and respond to the subtle changes in sword energy. Yinmo Marsh can instantly detonate the magic model as long as the presence of sword energy is detected, forming this bloody quagmire that makes living beings despair. Strictly speaking, this is a magic spell with a specific object, specially designed to deal with this sword puppet, because the yin spiritual energy floating here will only explode when it comes into contact with the presence of sword energy. If this sword puppet has intelligence and knows how to converge the sword energy that is overflowing from its body at the moment the magic explodes, it can delay the spread of Yinmo Marsh and seize a chance to escape from this quagmire. However, the sword puppet was just an incarnation of the sword energy of a sword cultivator in the supernatural power period. It had no intelligence and did not know how to restrain the sword energy. It fell clumsily into the coverage of the Yin Demon Swamp. Chen Mo saw the scene of the hunter falling into the trap through the spirit eye technique, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said, "Nothing special." The delayed burst technique, Yin Demon Swamp, temporarily deduced by the chip, can only deal with enemies with weak sword energy. Although the design is not good enough, it is enough to deal with a dull sword puppet. Puff puff puff. A series of crisp sounds of blood-colored bubbles bursting sounded in the swamp with a radius of less than 5 meters. As the bubbles burst, a series of blood beads fell on the sword puppet, dyeing its pure white body with scarlet blood flowers. Pollution. This is the pollution from the Yingxing technique. Blood flowers bloomed on the gaseous body of the sword puppet, and like mold, quickly spread all over its body. After a while, the sword puppet turned into a blood-red blurred humanoid object. In the mud under its feet, twisted black human hands stretched out and firmly grabbed its limbs. This is the embodiment of the word devil in Yin Demon Swamp. As long as the prey falls into the coverage of the mud, whether it chooses to struggle or not, it will be pulled into the endless abyss below by the black hands condensed by the demonic energy. The ground under the sword puppet has become a gathering place of high concentration yin spiritual energy, which is extremely corrosive. Even if 100 forged fine iron falls into it, it will turn into a pool of iron juice. Seeing that the tip of the sword puppet was about to fall into the Yinmo marsh, Chen Mo's smile became more and more obvious. Unexpectedly, the chip suddenly warned, "The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Ling. It is detected that the sword energy field around the sword puppet is rising rapidly. The energy level has exceeded 10.0. The upward trend is very strong and its peak value cannot be predicted. Please stay away immediately. Without looking back to see how the Yin Mo marsh corrodes the sword puppet, Chen Mo stretched out the Yin spirit wings on his back, and then attached a pair of micro-spiritual wings attached to the Yin Feng's Henzhen spell to his feet, and rushed to the Kangling Lake not far away. In a hurry, Chen Mo did not care to conceal the sound of his gloomy flying movements, like a sharp arrow shot from a bow, shooting towards the vast lake. Even if he attracted the attention of someone with ulterior motives, Chen Mo had no way to deal with it, because in addition to the increasingly urgent warnings from the chip, his spiritual sense was also frantically warning him. Behind him, it was as if a ferocious beast was chasing him. His heart was tightly gripped, and Chen Mo didn't even dare to turn his head. Ling. In the direction of 45 degrees to the left and rear, in 3 seconds, a vertical and horizontal sword energy will shoot towards the host's left leg. Please retract the left half of the Yinling wing, and sink to the lower right to avoid it. As soon as the chip's planning map appeared in his mind, Chen Mo's body subconsciously followed it. Due to the improvement of his divine essence, Chen Mo's body responded faster and faster according to the instructions of the chip. Often, as soon as the chip's instructions were received by Chen Mo's brain, his limbs, Qi Si, and consciousness Si would respond. The interval in between was shortened by 45% compared to when he did not have divine consciousness. Although from the perspective of external timing, Chen Mo's entire process of receiving, processing, and reacting was only improved by a short quarter, at the critical moment of life crisis, this saved time was the boundary between life and death. For example, the sword energy that was flying around at the moment, Chen Mo's reaction speed was so fast that he even had time to wait for the sword energy to pass by him and consult the chip about his next action plan. Without any deviation, the sword puppet passed by the sword energy that was shot from a long distance, passing by the left half of Chen Mo's body. Even the ordinary cloak that he wore on the outer side of the shroud was not damaged at all. The sword energy passed by him and landed in the middle of the trunk of a towering tree next to Chen Mo, breaking a thumb-sized round hole. In terms of destructive power, it was not great. Chapter 227, Chasing. The sword energy passed by him, but Chen Mo was so calm that he didn't even raise his eyelids. As long as he wasn't pierced by the sword energy of this level, with Chen Mo's physical fitness, he could withstand even 10 or so. After all, the sword puppet was too far away from Chen Mo, and the sword energy that shot out was already very weak when it reached him. It was good that it still had the current fierce power. However, Chen Mo didn't feel happy for long, and a big crisis came. Ling. The cultivation level of the sword puppet has risen sharply in a short period of time, and the energy level of the sword energy around it has exceeded the 20.0 mark. It is predicted that it has entered the initial stage of supernatural power. It is recommended that the host immediately use the teleportation array at the bottom of Kangling Lake to leave. Temporarily avoid the edge. This is the decision made by the chip. With the help of Chen Mo's perception, the chip began to collect data on the sword puppet that was completely exposed several miles away, and it did not affect Chen Mo's speed of controlling the Yinling wings to escape, which was more powerful than the ability of a person with two minds. The conclusion drawn was also very accurate. The reason is very simple. A person who multitasks, in essence, divides his limited spiritual consciousness into two parts. One part is used to control the physical body, and the other part is used to do other things. Since the total amount of spiritual energy of a practitioner is constant, if one side consumes more of his mind, the other side will inevitably make mistakes such as deformed movements in trance. This is the limitation of being born as a human. After all, human practitioners are not born with two heads, two minds, and two souls. However, the operating principle of the chip is completely different. It is like another independent brain that is twinned with Chen Mo's soul. There is neither the disguised weakening consequence of multitasking, nor the disadvantage of two minds fighting each other. Therefore, even if Chen Mo is concentrating on controlling the Yinling wing, the chip's calculations, data collection, and transmission of analysis reports will not consume his mind, and thus his actions. Only when Chen Mo instructs the chip to proceed to the next operation will he have to use part of his mind. Therefore, Chen Mo, who was flying towards Kangling Lake at a constant speed, had the leisure to observe the sword puppet's change diagram projected in the sea of consciousness by the chip. The pure white body, which was originally dyed red by the Yan Mo marsh, ignited clusters of light red flames, covering the whole body of the sword puppet. Upon closer inspection, its fuel was the yin spiritual energy that Chen Mo used to release the trap technique. Under the stimulation of Chen Mo's technique, the momentum of the sword puppet became more and more powerful. Chen Mo was surprised. He didn't expect that this sword puppet had such a magical ability to turn the enemy's technique into his own, making the power of the sword energy continue to rise. A moment ago, the sword energy that shot towards Chen Mo across several miles was the sword puppet's exquisite means of using Chen Mo's technique to treat Chen Mo's body. The yin spiritual energy burned out, and the color of the flames on the surface of the sword puppet turned into pure white. Its blurred body and limbs shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. The sword puppet burns a large amount of sword energy in a short period of time, greatly improving its cultivation and briefly possessing the strength of the initial stage of supernatural power. Please speed up your flight to prevent it from killing you with one blow. The data stream transmitted by the chip was extremely clear. Even though Chen Mo knew that the blazing sword puppet was just an illusion projected by the chip in the sea of consciousness through imaging technology, he was still terrified by its terrifying momentum. The instinct of life echoed in his mind, telling him, "Don't stop escaping, otherwise, you will definitely die." The sword puppet's existence time will be greatly shortened due to the burning of the sword energy that makes up its body. The host has no time to return to the sect to divert the disaster, and can only escape through the teleportation array at the bottom of Kangling Lake. Because the sword puppet has no intelligence, it does not care about its body at all, and has only one thought, to kill Chen Mo. For this, it is willing to pay any price, including the foundation of its existence in the world, sword energy. Stimulated by the sword puppet's desperate behavior, Chen Mo can only burn the Qi Yuan and continuously inject it into the Yinling wings. The thick black wings grew a pair of huge wings above and below, completely covering Chen Mo's back, forming a magnificent scene of 6 wings moving together. The 6-winged yin spirit wings flew away, leaving a cloud mark on the horizon, and fell into the center of Kangling Lake like a meteor. The speed was so fast, and the oncoming strong wind made Chen Mo's exposed limbs feel the pain of knife cutting and the burning sensation of intense friction with the air. In this state, even with his essence of more than 10.0, he couldn't hold on for long. Over time, there's even the possibility of physical collapse. Of course, before that, Chen Mo's Qi Yuan must be exhausted first. Boom! The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. The dull sound resounded across the surface of Kangling Lake. Chen Mo fell into the lake at a very fast speed, with a strong momentum, and brought up layers of waves, rushing to the shore like a tidal wave, sweeping away many rocks and ancient trees. Without sparing the loss of Qi Yuan, Chen Mo's destructive power has already touched the limit of a practitioner in the Qi training period. Just a little aftermath has caused huge damage to the terrain and small creatures around Kangling Lake. The fear of practitioners is reflected here. With the increase of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Chen Mo's magic power level at this time is far from what it was when he was in the subcontinent. As for Wu Zun, it is even more difficult to compare. Even so, the distance between Chen Mo and the sword puppet did not increase. On the contrary, the distance between the two is constantly shortening at a speed visible to the naked eye. The chip's alarm. The source of danger is getting closer. The warning sound is getting louder and louder in Chen Mo's mind. Almost as soon as Chen Mo entered the water, the sword puppet descended on the surface of Kangling Lake. Feeling the water spirit's subtle resistance to the sword energy, the sword puppet paused slightly, and then the sword energy around it turned into an inverted cone, with the tip as the front, piercing into the lake. Unlike the huge momentum caused by Chen Mo's entry into the water, the sword puppet's action was silent, but it abruptly split a smooth crack in the lake in front of it. The obstacles, whether water, fish, or algae, were crushed into the smallest dust by the sword energy, which was difficult to distinguish with the naked eye. In comparison, Chen Mo's huge momentum seemed to be insufficient. Because only the weak need to show their destructive power to the outside world to show their strength. This is a manifestation of guilty conscience. Chen Mo began to worry. The sharp sword energy behind him had passed through the shroud and came over. Although it could not affect the operation of the 6-winged yin spirit wings, it could only last for another 100 breaths at most. The alchemist's breath simulation model has been established. Please inject your key into it. The teleportation array at the bottom of Kangling Lake has also been located. Please follow the following route and ignore the sword puppet behind you. Chapter 228 Teleportation Array, Shocking Change. In front of him, the Bagua platform that teleported the evil spirit, the 5 poisonous salamander and the Yinling spring 3 or 4 years ago appeared. It was also Chen Mo's only hope to escape calmly at this time. Ling. Please strictly follow the relevant operations and don't waste a millisecond. After repeated calculations of 7,749 mathematical models of this chip, no matter how the sword puppet burns the sword energy body, it cannot harm the host before the host activates the teleportation array. With the endorsement of the chip, Chen Mo, who is in the state of life and death, put his heart at ease. He didn't care about the pressing sword energy behind him at all, and his eyes were fixed on the Bagua platform directly below. As time passed, the originally smooth and bright surface of the stone platform had been covered with a lot of dark green algae, full of desolation. Even the swimming fish had no interest in staying in this desolate place. However, Chen Mo's sudden appearance broke the existence track of the Bagua platform. Through the simulation technique of the chip, Chen Mo released a trace of the aura of a real alchemist, which attracted its attention when he was more than 100 meters away from the Bagua platform. Just like yesterday, magnificent pillars of light rose from the Bagua and its surrounding areas, and began to absorb the free spiritual energy around them. When it was activated last time, the Bagua consumed a high concentration yin spiritual energy condensed into liquid from the source of the yin liquid. Now, without the yin liquid to supply energy, it can only target the free spiritual energy around it. As a high-quality existence at the same level as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the sword energy is very consistent with the charging conditions of the teleportation array, and was targeted by the Bagua in the window period. This is a shocking change that the chip had never expected. Since little is known about this kind of teleportation array handed down from ancient times, the chip can't calculate the current changes at all, nor can it understand the principles contained therein. Fortunately, the Bagua platform targeted the sword puppet, which was harmless to Chen Mo. On the contrary, it was a huge benefit. He didn't have to worry that the sword puppet would get angry and destroy the Bagua platform as the end point of the formation after he was teleported away, causing him to be unable to return even if he got the benefits in the ruins, and be trapped alive in the treasure of the ruins. The charging of the Bagua platform completely dispelled Chen Mo's above concerns. He saw that the sword puppet, who was chasing him closely and aggressively, was about to kill the target with his own hands, but was torn away by the huge suction from the stone platform below. Even the highly condensed sharp sword energy had no resistance to this powerful attraction. The sword edge transformed by the sword puppet deviated and brushed past Chen Mo's side, and fell into the embrace of the Bagua platform at a speed several times faster than him. In just 3 blinks of an eye, the sword puppet, which still had half of its body to burn, turned into a wisp of green smoke, and with a swish, it all drilled into the Bagua platform. No one knew what the material of this transmission endpoint was. Even if it contained the sword energy comparable to the level of an early-stage supernatural power cultivator, there were no cracks on the surface. Even the algae attached to it were strangely not torn by the sword energy. It was as if the entire stone was covered by an invisible protective film, and it was extremely safe. Looking back, Chen Mo took a look at the original position of the pursuers and found that the sword puppet only left a faint black gas. The breath contained was very familiar. With a slight touch of his consciousness, he understood its essence. It was a massive medium containing its own smell. Ling. We have figured out why the sword puppet can track the host all the way without losing it. The host left a unique personal aura at the scene of the murder and robbery in the subcontinent, which was captured by the sword puppet. Theoretically, the content of this type of aura at the scene of the killing is very low, and it will be confused by various external auras, making it difficult to capture. How the sword puppet master identified the host from the auras of thousands of animals and plants in the Gobi Desert, due to insufficient data, it is temporarily impossible to determine. The chip could not calculate the deeper principles. If we want to find out the truth, we have to wait until Chen Mo breaks through the magical power period. However, the chip has locked the approximate range of the person who condensed the sword puppet and tried to kill Chen Mo. Around, that is, the teachers, relatives and friends of the Housing Brothers. After returning to the sect, they will check the list of personnel of Tanya Sword Sect, and all the sect relationships between the two of them will be known. At that time, Chen Mo would rather kill 1,000 people by mistake than let one go. The Housing Brothers are both elite sword cultivators who have the hope of reaching the supernatural power stage. There must be records of them in the demon sect. Maybe there is a task to take down these two people in the blood clothes building. I will settle this account with you sooner or later. Are the sword cultivators of the Tanya sword sect so great? Chen Mo snorted coldly, raised his foot, and fell into the range of the light column, excited by the Bagua platform, feeling the teleportation array in operation. Because of the three basic soul techniques for the entry of alchemists in the soul burial abyss, the chip deduced a disguise technique to simulate a breath of alchemists through permutations and combinations. Although the information is insufficient and the simulated breath technique is full of mistakes, it is no problem to deceive its evil spirits and alchemists' recognition during the operation stage of the teleportation array. A teleportation array without anyone in charge, even if it is the crystallization of the wisdom of practitioners in ancient times, now has few functions left. It is not easy for it to maintain the most basic teleportation function after running for thousands and tens of thousands of years. The latest novels are first published on the 69th Book Forum. If it can still identify Chen Mo, the fake alchemist, and bounce Chen Mo away, it can only be blamed on fate. Fortunately, this worst situation did not happen. Chen Mo, who was in the range of the light column, felt the rich fluctuations of spatial spiritual energy, and mysterious runes formed around him. Looking out, the lake water was distorted, giving Chen Mo a strong sense of unreality. It was as if the space he was in was like a piece of canvas that was torn off the wall by someone, and everything on the wall was separated from him by a whole world. A large number of ancient divine patterns were found, suspected to be the key to the operation of the teleportation array, and it was determined to be precious data recording. When the chip saw this phenomenon that science could not reasonably explain, it would consciously record the information without Chen Mo giving orders. Even though the ancient divine runes were a magical text that required divine consciousness to read, with the chip's extensive knowledge and strong memory, there was no difficulty in reading and recording. Soon, the operating rules of this teleportation array were recorded exactly by the chip. As long as there was enough time, the chip would eventually decipher its secrets, so Chen Mo wouldn't have to worry about it. The dizziness of space shifting appeared. Even though Chen Mo's body was strong, he was no different from a baby in front of such a great magical power that could change the world. He could only pray that the teleportation array would not go wrong. Chapter 229, Alchemist Heritage. Everything was fine during the transmission process. Chen Mo was in the formation. He could not observe the changes in the space around him, nor did he feel the strong shock and oppression. It was as if all his senses were blocked artificially. He spent a long transmission process in a daze. Fortunately, the transmission was not disturbed by external forces throughout the whole process. Otherwise, if the transmission array was broken, Chen Mo would have only one ending, torn into powder by the endless space turbulence. A mere Kigan practitioner could not even last a second under such a natural disaster. Of course, there are very few extreme situations that can break the transmission array, so Chen Mo boldly walked into this transmission array. The strong sense of dizziness made Chen Mo lose the concept of time. After an unknown period of time, his eyes lit up, and his consciousness extended outward, feeling the high concentration of spiritual energy emitted by the Yinling spring. Opening his eyes, Chen Mo saw a small strange stone room and realized that he had arrived at the ruins on the other side of the Bagua platform, a ruin handed down from the glorious period of ancient practitioners. Even if the things in front of us were left by the later generations in the ancient times, according to the inference of the chip, they would not be far away in time, because the appearance of the divine pattern is the proof of the pure inheritance of the ancient times. This kind of systematic text can only be mastered by those who have experienced the teachings and answers of the practitioners in the ancient times. In just over 100 years after the end of the ancient times, the inheritance of the divine pattern has been broken. The duration of the space transmission is 5 minutes, and the estimated transmission distance is thousands of miles. The specific number needs further calculation. In the surrounding environment, there is no life form except the host. It is very safe. Chen Mo breathed a sigh of relief, raised his right leg, and took a step forward. Dingling, as if kicking something hard, Chen Mo looked down and found that it was a dark yin crystal. It was round and completely immersed in the yin spirit liquid flowing all over the ground. No wonder he didn't notice the existence of this small roadblock when he just came out of the transmission array. The stone room at the end of the teleportation array was very small, and the Yinling spring occupied most of the space. Chen Mo's lower body was immersed in a liquid that was completely condensed from pure Yinling qi. Unlike ordinary lake water, The Yinling liquid exuded a warmth. For a Yinling vein practitioner like Chen Mo, it was like returning to amniotic fluid, full of a sense of security. There was no need for the consciousness to deliberately induce the Yinling liquid. Drops of the dark black liquid flowed through Chen Mo's pores and entered his internal organs, slowly changing his physique. Some of the fine impurities in Chen Mo's body were squeezed out by the Yinling liquid. These were body impurities that he had not discovered before. Only in such a pure Yinling Qi environment could they be revealed and then excreted from the body. Fatally, Chen Mo even had signs of the great success of the 9 yin forging veins. The 7 spiritual veins that had already been externalized were like living things, absorbing the Yinling liquid, slowly growing and nurturing branches. Such changes laid a solid foundation for Chen Mo's final body of the 9 spirit veins. As the saying goes, if you are close to someone, you will be red; if you are close to someone, you will be black. Chen Mo had a hunch that after soaking in the yin spirit spring for a long time, his own pure yin spirit vein aptitude would still change in the direction of being more close to yin spirit Qi, until he was transformed into a son of yin spirit Qi-like existence. If it reaches this step, the 9 yin vein casting technique can basically be declared complete. At that time, the yin spirit body will be formed, and even if it is not as good as the yin spirit root talented person who is superior to the 9 spirit veins, it is not far behind. The difference between the two is nothing more than the difference between the original goods and the acquired filling goods. The quality is not much different, and the appearance is different. When it comes to practicing Qi, casting spells and fighting, there is not much difference. What's more, Chen Mo also has the chip to assist him. If he really fights with a yin spirit root talented person, it is still unknown who will win. This yin crystal is the remnant of the evil spirit, the 5 poisonous salamander. I suspect that the squeezing force during the space transmission is more harmful to the soul without a physical body. The 5 poisonous salamander has just transformed into an evil spirit, and its soul is unstable, so its soul collapsed and died during the transmission. The owner of this yin crystal was analyzed by the chip. It was the evil spirit that escaped with the help of the teleportation array. Seeing its miserable end with only 1 remaining crystal, Chen Mo couldn't help but sigh. The Yinling spring is still not enough to nourish the evil spirits. It didn't save this evil spirit. But in this way, Chen Mo didn't have to kill the evil spirit himself. After a long transmission process, Chen Mo's combat power was limited. It might take some effort to deal with this evil spirit. If it soaked in the Yinling spring for 3 or 4 years, its cultivation would always be improved. While waiting for the opportunity, it might really make Chen Mo, who hasn't recovered from the teleportation array, fluster him for a while. Chen Mo originally wanted to avenge its ridicule that day, but found that it was impossible in the current situation. Just kick it like a ball to avenge the arrow that day. Chen Mo smiled, raised his foot and kicked the shiny yin crystal hard. With a bang, it hit the wall of the stone room facing Chen Mo, and a tiny crack appeared on the crystal surface. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Even if the yin crystal is broken into 17 or 18 pieces, the medicinal power and refining effect will not decrease much when used, so when Chen Mo kicked the yin crystal to vent his anger, he did not hold back and did whatever he could to destroy the yin crystal. Anyway, it can be sold no matter what. It turns out that the remains left by the evil spirit, the 5 poisonous salamander, are very durable. Even after being kicked hard by Chen Mo, they did not break apart. After letting out the bad breath that had been pent up for 3 or 4 years, Chen Mo began to pay attention to the remains of this stone chamber. The futon, spiritual flowers, and auspicious grass placed on the ground have been preserved under the erosion of time. They look intact and may even be used as medicine or to make pills, but when Chen Mo's hand touched them, they turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared without a trace. The continuous weathering even gave Chen Mo an illusion. The stone chamber in front of him and the previous teleportation array were all a dream that existed in his imagination. Divine patterns found, judged as precious information, automatic recording begins. The chip found that the only valuable things in the stone chamber were the divine patterns engraved on the 4 walls that could only be read with divine consciousness. The content on the wall seems to be inherited by alchemists. The number of divine rune characters in the database has increased significantly. It is possible to analyze it. It is estimated to take 14 minutes. It seems that when the material disappears in the long river of time, the knowledge, with a divine rune as the carrier, is passed down intact. Chen Mo seems to understand why the practitioners in ancient times used the divine rune as a carrier to record various divine works. Because no matter how long it has been, the spiritual runes engraved on the stone objects are better preserved than the memory bamboo slips and the photo stone. Moreover, the reading of the divine consciousness can better absorb the knowledge essence contained in the divine runes from the later generations. Time is indeed the enemy of practitioners. Only knowledge is immortal, so that the ancestors who wrote all this have continued their thoughts through inheritance, and in a sense, they have also continued their existence. Chen Mo was quite emotional and murmured in the empty stone chamber. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Collapse. In the stone room, all the exquisite small ornaments, pots of lifelike flowers, and ancient parchment books were turned to ashes in front of Chen Mo. After a while, there was nothing in front of him except the motionless Yinling liquid. The divine sense swept the entire stone room, even the most remote corners, but found nothing. Chen Mo sighed in disappointment, feeling empty in his heart. This feeling of entering a treasure mountain but finding that everything he saw was fake gold made Chen Mo feel very uncomfortable. He thought that his hard work of simulating the breath of the alchemist to pass through the teleportation array was in vain. As for the secret compartment and secret room, they did not exist. The stone material that made up the stone room was a material that Chen Mo had never seen before, and even the divine sense could not penetrate it. In addition to what he saw in front of him, Chen Mo did not find anything strange through his divine sense. He also tried to use magic to bombard the walls of the stone room, but it did not shake at all. Later, Chen Mo gradually increased the power of the spells he used by increasing the energy level by 1.0 each time, but not even a white mark was left on the wall of this stone room. Alice, it seems that the only exit is the teleportation array. The only valuable thing besides the inheritance of the divine pattern is the Yinling spring. Chen Mo sighed, sank into the Yinling liquid, and saw a piece of black jade at the bottom of the water. It was very round, without a single flaw, and was so beautiful and perfect that people couldn't take their eyes off it. Lying quietly at the bottom of the water, the round jade, like a living being, its smooth surface slowly rose and fell, as if it was breathing the Yinling liquid. Looking closely, Chen Mo noticed the flow of Yinling liquid around the jade. It seemed that it was the spring of this Yinling spring. Things like spiritual veins and spiritual springs that condense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth have one or more cores. All spiritual energy flows from these sources to the outside world continuously until it forms a paradise for practitioners. The Yinling spring naturally requires a spring. The spring in front of Chen Mo is a piece of jade that is less than the size of an adult's palm. Although it is small, the Yinling key contained in it is like a mountain or a sea, which can easily burst a key sea of hundreds of Chen Mo. In terms of the quantity and quality of Yinling key, this small spring is enough for a cultivator in the late stage of supernatural power to practice. Even in the blood-clothed sect, this kind of spiritual object is also the object of crazy grabbing by the vain masters, supernatural power elders and deacons. With Chen Mo's mere 10th level key training, he can't keep it. Fortunately, the chip has also designed a magic method to conceal this Yinling spring. It's very simple. The magic method is called backflow. Chen Mo held a jade spring in his palm and injected Qi Yuan into it, forming an arc-shaped channel, which expanded the connection between it and the Yinling liquid in the outside world by another 3 points. Afterwards, Chen Mo used his spiritual consciousness as a guide to push the Yinling liquid back to the spring. As for each flow of Yinling liquid that spontaneously sprayed out, it was blocked by Chen Mo's consciousness, allowing only inflow but not outflow. In this way, a large amount of Yinling liquid that settled in the stone chamber continuously flowed into the spring eye and was firmly locked inside by Chen Mo's consciousness. The dark black water droplets became fewer and fewer, until within Chen Mo's sight, there were only the smooth and flat stone walls of the stone chamber without a single crack, which had 6 sides, up and down, left and right, front and back, locking Chen Mo inside. Applying the last bit of consciousness to block the opening of the spiritual eye, the Yinling spring was completely condensed in the small jade stone on Chen Mo's palm, without a trace of spiritual energy leaking out. Even if it was a treasure appraiser, without tools for analysis and without using consciousness to drill into the surface of the spiritual eye, there was no possibility of discovering its true appearance. In this way, Chen Mo could wander around with this extremely precious Yinling spring. The divine pattern information engraved on the four walls of the stone chamber has been fully entered. Due to the significant increase in the number of characters, the host has completed the analysis of all the divine pattern contents that the host has come into contact with. Data information is being sorted out. Please be prepared to receive a large amount of information. Chen Mo's inheritance of the alchemist, which he had been thinking about for a long time, was interpreted bit by bit under the transmission method of the chip, controlling the flow rate of information. Sure enough, this is the inheritance of the alchemist, a lopsided way of ancient practitioners. As soon as Chen Mo saw the description of alchemists, those who play with the spirit and steal the power of evil spirits, he knew that he had found the right direction. The alchemist can not only improve the spirit essence and help oneself advance to the supernatural power stage faster and more safely, but also is the most brutal type among the practitioners. In ancient times, it was also a fierce existence. When dealing with spirits and evil spirits, those with yin spirit bane qualifications have a relatively obvious advantage. Not only are they more sensitive to the changes in the levels of these spirits, but when stealing the power of evil spirits, their utilization rate of their talents is also higher than that of those with other attribute spirit veins. The path of alchemy is a path of cultivation tailor-made for Chen Mo. The latest novel is first published on the 69th Book Forum. Chen Mo read it eagerly, without waiting for the chip to completely transmit the relevant information. The first thing he saw was a rampant alchemist's foundation building an entry method: devour an evil spirit, pay attention, devour it alive. Hey, when I stayed overnight at Ling's house that day, I devoured an inferior evil spirit in my sea of consciousness. This text evoked Chen Mo's old memories. That was the first time he came into contact with an evil spirit. If it weren't for the reminder of the chip, he would have been possessed by the evil spirit long ago. It was also that thrilling soul-soul fight that made Chen Mo understand the danger of the soul-soul battle. Since the soul-soul battle is based on the sea of consciousness of a certain person, those who are not well trained and at a disadvantage don't even have the chance to escape. Especially for the attacking side playing away games. Then I have completely met the prerequisites for building the foundation. Before Chen Mo continued to read the remaining alchemist inheritance materials, he heard the warning sound of the chip, beep. The vibration of the four walls of the stone chamber is detected, which is a sign before collapse. Please activate the teleportation formation immediately and return to Kangling Lake. Cause: reading of the content of the divine pattern. This inheritance is a one-time consumable and the key to supporting this stone chamber. Once read by someone, it means the end of its existence. As for staying in this stone chamber and using protective magic to carry it until everything is settled, Chen Mo did not dare to do so, because the four walls were made of special materials and he could not find out the situation outside the stone chamber. It may be a cave paradise that no one has discovered, growing all kinds of rare spiritual materials, or it may be a void space, without even the spiritual energy, water, and sunlight that practitioners rely on to survive. Chen Mo did not dare to gamble, so he could only activate the teleportation formation before the stone chamber collapsed. Chapter 231: The Ultimate Secret Door of Ranku Cordyceps. Before stepping into the teleportation array, Chen Mo took a last look at the stone chamber that was unknown how many years old. On the smooth mirror-like wall, spider-web-like cracks appeared, reflecting a faint mysterious light. Chen Mo felt dizzy after just a glance. Danger detected, extreme danger, it's spatial turbulence. Please leave this place quickly, it's too late, and there will be no body left. The sound of the chip was unprecedentedly tense and urgent, and Chen Mo's heart was also tightened. However, the speed of the teleportation array was not something he could decide, and he could only let the divine pattern slowly surround him and take him away. Although it was a crisis, Chen Mo also took this opportunity to feel the power of spatial turbulence at close range. The spatial cutting force blocked outside by the stone chamber wall can not only cut a living person into powder, but even the soul in a material form can be torn into powder by this cutting force. This is why Chen Mo felt dizzy after taking a look at the cracks in the wall. The power of spatial turbulence is the annihilation of both the soul and the body. If Chen Mo falls into it, he will be completely wiped out, and he won't even have the chance to reincarnate. It's a pity for these excellent stones. Looking at the cracks crawling all over the walls of the stone room, Chen Mo's heart was as painful as a knife. He felt sorry for these top-grade spiritual materials that could block the spatial turbulence. If he could move a small piece back, it would be enough to ask a late-stage supernatural power cultivator to help him once. Even without processing, the material of the four walls itself is a good defensive talisman that can calmly resist the power of the magic of the supernatural power period. It's a pity that Chen Mo is in the teleportation array and has lost the ability to move freely. He can't take a piece of stone from the side. Tingliuli, the divine pattern that makes up the teleportation array, finally slowly rotates with Chen Mo as the center. Seeing this scene, Chen Mo was relieved. At the critical moment, this teleportation array did not fail, opening a smooth way for him to escape from the dead. After taking a last look at the gradually collapsing stone chamber, Chen Mo fell into darkness, and once again experienced the unpleasant experience of being teleported to this ruin. Only this time, the physical sensation was much worse. Chen Mo only felt that the space around him was collapsing inwards, constantly squeezing his body, and his internal organs all had a sense of being squeezed and twisted. Just like a small insect falling into amber, as the resin was gradually solidifying, Chen Mo, who had no ability to break free, could only desperately experience the pain of his body being compressed bit by bit. Crackling, scratching, these were the wailing sounds of muscles, bones, and skin. If Chen Mo had not already achieved a small success in body training, he would have been killed by the squeezing force of space. Obviously, the aftermath of the collapse of the stone chamber affected the teleportation array, and inevitably transmitted it to Chen Mo. Fortunately, the array core wrapped in the divine pattern always maintained the lowest level of protection against the external space storm, and did not let Chen Mo be directly exposed to the cutting of the space turbulence. The cutting power of the spatial turbulence on the soul was blocked by the divine runes at the outermost edge of the formation. Chen Mo could still hold on, just the pain of the flesh. I don't know how long it took, just when Chen Mo felt that he was about to be crushed into a ball of minced meat by the heavy pressure, his whole body relaxed, and the suffocating spatial pressure disappeared instantly. A mouthful of cold lake water poured into his mouth. Chen Mo opened his eyes, and realized that he had successfully survived the space transmission and returned to Kangling Lake alive. However, Chen Mo's injuries at this time were extremely serious, and even the chip was powerless, giving a pessimistic judgment that the host's whole body was comminuted, fractured, muscles collapsed, and the essence value dropped to 0.3 inches. In this state, Chen Mo's body was not as good as a mere mortal. At the bottom of Kangling Lake, hundreds of meters deep, there was only one way to die. There was not much time left for Chen Mo to save himself. He felt that the oxygen in his blood was seriously insufficient, and his consciousness was dragged down by the broken body, and there was not enough energy to continue. In this extremely weak state of the body, even though there was still a lot of qi in the qi and the spiritual consciousness was still there, Chen Mo could not even perform the simplest, floating technique. He could only desperately lie at the bottom of the water, feeling the heavy water pressure, the decreasing oxygen, and gradually approaching death. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. His eyelids became heavier, his vision became darker, his will became heavier, and in a daze, Chen Mo heard the last sound of the chip. Ling. According to the judgment, if no extraordinary measures are taken, the host has a 98% chance of dying at the bottom of Kangling Lake. For now, the only solution is to use Ranku cordyceps. The consequences are unknown, and the host can only leave it to fate. To die immediately or to wait until he swims ashore before dying, the chip chose the former without hesitation. In its view, all matters must be based on the premise of ensuring the life of the host Chen Mo. As for the adverse consequences of using Ranku cordyceps, we can only take it one step at a time. At least, Chen Mo can't die now. Since Chen Mo is no longer able to save himself, the chip has obtained the authority to use bioelectric current under the supreme principle of ensuring the safety of the host's life after judging by its own program, and began to stimulate the Ranku cordyceps in Chen Mo's body. This goo worm was originally given by Guzai to intercept the results of Chen Mo's spiritual practice. When he was trying to reach the supernatural power stage, it harvested him at once. Not only did it prevent the disciple from ever advancing to the supernatural power stage and threatening Guzai's position as the master of the veins, it also met some of the cultivation needs of this goo grass vein master. Ranku cordyceps, which was secretly placed by Guzai, is no longer a goo worm that coexists and benefits with a practitioner, but a blood-sucking worm that sucks blood and marrow, which is harmful but not beneficial. Previously, Chen Mo had removed the secret door left by Guzai on it, which was considered to be eating the sugar coating and throwing away the shell. However, that was just Chen Mo's shallow judgment several years ago, and he did not discover and eradicate the ultimate secret door engraved in the deepest part of Ranku Cordyceps' body by Guxi. Having just received the inheritance of the alchemist, the chip's understanding of the sinister magic has reached a new level. It scanned the Ranku Cordyceps quietly curled up in Chen Mo's Qi again, and came to the conclusion that the remaining evil of Ranku Cordyceps has not been eliminated, and the consequences of rashly using it to save lives are unknown. However, Chen Mo's life breath has become weaker and weaker. If he does not melt Ranku Cordyceps and feed Chen Mo with its intercepted spirit, he will only die at the bottom of Kangling Lake. Ranku Cordyceps has been stimulated by high-intensity bioelectricity and has died. The spirit contained in its body has begun to feed back to the host. In order to let Chen Mo survive first, the chip killed Ranku Cordyceps, and then guided 3 different but harmonious energies to start the double circulation of the big and small Zhaoshan in Chen Mo's body, constantly repairing his damaged body. Chapter 232 Harvest. Thousands of miles away in the subcontinent Wudu, Guxi, standing in the air, in the ancient city that has turned into ruins, continues to appreciate the spiritual energy of the heavenly rain and dew. Due to the many benefits obtained, the ghost fire that Guxi's body has become darker in color, and there is a chill that continues to radiate, dyeing the dilapidated Wu's imperial palace with a layer of white frost, which is in sharp contrast to the hot weather in midsummer. If the cold is a little heavier, it is possible to have heavy snow and flying frost in June. Looking at this situation, Guxi already has the ability to change the celestial phenomena in a small range, and I am afraid that there is not much difference between him and the Supreme Elder of the condensation pill stage. Hey, the little guy has also reached the critical moment of using Ranku Cordyceps. It seems that in the process of hunting down the remnants of Wudu, he has gained a lot of benefits from the infusion of spiritual energy, and can't wait to break through the supernatural power stage. In the dimly burning ghost fire, a cluster of flames suddenly jumped up, stretching very long, showing Guzai's surprise. He muttered to himself, guessing about Chen Mo's situation. Although he left an ultimate secret door on the Ranku Cordyceps that even the chip did not detect, he could not observe Chen Mo's body state in real time because he was thousands of miles away. The guess he made was still quite different from the facts. Even the fact that the first secret door left on the Ranku Cordyceps had been cracked by the chip was not guessed by Guzai. There was nothing he could do about it. The late stage of supernatural power is not an omniscient existence. Guzai could only make an empirical judgment based on the fact that all his disciples used Ranku Cordyceps when they broke through the bottleneck of the supernatural power stage. So, he guessed wrong. Chen Mo had to use Ranku Cordyceps because his physical body was injured. I didn't expect that a junior who has just entered the sect for 3 or 4 years has the strength to challenge the supernatural power stage. This speed of progress is not inferior to the children of outstanding cultivation families with deep backgrounds and rich resources. If this kid continues to improve, I am afraid that my position as the leader of the vein will be in jeopardy. Guzai sighed faintly, with a sense of the front wave was beaten to death on the beach by the back wave. Although he has touched the threshold of the condensation pill stage, it is not an easy thing to take a step forward. Until the moment of impact, no matter how much you feel, it is just an illusion like a flower in the mirror and a moon in the water. Without making full preparations, Guzai will not impact the condensation pill stage, and he will not allow himself to fail in the impact, and his cultivation level will drop so much that he will be bullied by the disciples of the Guxiao lineage and seize the throne of the vein leader. What a pity, such a talented young man is going to be harvested by me again. Guzai sighed, but his tone was quite happy. He had sent away countless outstanding demon disciples who he had personally recruited into the Gugrass lineage, and harvested countless spirits, energy and spirit. Through Ranku Cordyceps, Guzai not only stole their cultivation results, but also took away the fuel at the critical moment when the disciples were impacting the supernatural power period, causing them to lack stamina. They had clearly stepped half a foot into the supernatural power period, but in the end they failed and died. As for how to harvest Chen Mo next, Guzai had the practical experience of countless deceased disciples in the past, and he was already familiar with it. He slowly sensed the ultimate secret door left on Ranku Cordyceps in advance. Wisps of silver-white divine consciousness appeared around the ghost fire, and the faint twisting force even affected the surrounding air. If there were mortals who didn't know how to live or die approached, they would be immediately cut into the smallest particles by these materialized Guzai divine consciousness. Through the subtle connection with the ultimate secret door, Guzai's consciousness seemed to have established a mysterious passage with Chen Mo, who was thousands of miles away. The silver-white spiritual consciousness ribbon pierced into the void and flowed towards Chen Mo along this mysterious passage, like a hungry spider crawling along a spider web towards its trapped prey. On the other side, Chen Mo was still in a coma, unaware of Guzai's secret assassination. In the sea of Qi, Rongku cordyceps, which looked like an insect but not an insect, like a grass but not a grass, gradually turned into a pool of blood, feeding Chen Mo. In the past, 1% of the Qi, spirit, and essence condensed by practice after practice was intercepted by Rongku cordyceps. Over time, the energy contained in its body was a number that Chen Mo could not imagine. Originally, this was a preparation for the impact of the supernatural power period, in order to have more fuel to replace the loss of life, and help Chen Mo break through the bottleneck of the supernatural power period in one fell swoop. However, in order to let Chen Mo swim to the shore alive first, Rongku cordyceps had to die in advance. As for what Chen Mo should do when he reaches the supernatural power stage in the future, the chip can only think of another way. Survive first. Although Rongku cordyceps belongs to the suborder of insect poison, it is much less related to the earthworm that regenerates after losing its limbs. The chip cannot extract part of its energy without hurting its life. Therefore, in order to obtain the energy to repair Chen Mo's body, the only way is to kill this Rongku cordyceps, which is a great waste of resources. The three elements of spirit, energy and spirit condensed into three blooming flower buds on the surface of the dead body of Rongku cordyceps. The three flowers gathered at the top, and the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit emerged in the shape of a Chinese character, reaching a wonderful balance, and gradually melted the petals at the same rate, injecting the essence contained in them into Chen Mo's body. Chen Mo, who was pale and with shriveled muscles, glowed red at a speed visible to the naked eye, which was a sign of recovery of vitality. After a few breaths, the amount of Qi and blood contained in Rongku cordyceps even exceeded Chen Mo's short-term absorption capacity and overflowed from the body. A layer of hazy blood formed a protective shield around Chen Mo, isolating the water of Kangling Lake and the heavy water pressure from the outside, providing a more comfortable environment for Chen Mo to recuperate. The latest novel is first published on liujishu.com. In addition to the flower buds representing the essence, the flower buds of Qi Yuan and Shen Yuan also dropped petals at the same time, merging into Chen Mo's Qi C and consciousness C. However, in the teleportation array, only Chen Mo's physical body was severely damaged, and the two-dimensional data of Qi Yuan and Jing Yuan did not drop significantly. It was just that due to the weakness of the physical body, it could not play a role for a while. The three elements of essence, Qi Yuan and Shen, complement each other and depend on each other. If any one of them fails, the other two will fail. This is why Chen Mo cannot perform self-rescue magic after leaving the teleportation array. The physical body was too seriously injured, which dragged down Chen Mo's soul, leaving him with only his Qi Yuan and Shen Yuan, but no chance to use them. Only ghost cultivators and evil spirits can abandon their physical bodies, ignore the existence of their essence, and directly release various soul-level techniques through their Qi Yuan and Shen Yuan. Therefore, after only making up for a little bit of the loss of Qi Yuan and Shen Yuan, the nourishing energy contained in the petals had no channel to vent, and it was scattered to the periphery of the Qi Sea and the Sea of Consciousness. What a waste. This is the result of Chen Mo's years of hard work. The physical body was restored to its original state, and Chen Mo's consciousness was instantly awakened. Feeling the swelling of the physical body, Qi Sea, and Sea of Consciousness, he immediately understood, this is the happiness symptom of too much energy accumulation and inability to vent. With a real-time monitoring of the chip, even if it is in a state of expansion for a long time, there is no danger of exploding and dying, but the energy in the Rongku cordyceps can only be wasted. Chen Mo is reluctant to give up, and planned to directly impact the magical power period at the bottom of Kangling Lake. The harvest of foreign divine consciousness has been detected. The invasion path is the ultimate secret door of Rongku cordyceps. Please be careful, host. Chapter 233, The Methods of the Alchemist. Hearing the warning from the chip, Chen Mo's pupils shrank, and his Qi and Shen Yuan, which had been ready to move, quickly cooled down. He really didn't expect that Guzai was so cunning that he left 2 secret doors, one deep and one shallow, on the Ronku cordyceps that he gave to his disciples. The shallow one was used to monitor the amount of energy that Ronku cordyceps intercepted from his disciples on weekdays, and it had the ability to harvest at special moments. The other deep one was used to forcibly harvest at critical moments, not only to cut all the leek leaves, but also to pull out all the leek roots fiercely. According to the chip's analysis, this deepest hidden ultimate secret door could not only drain all the energy from Ronku cordyceps, but also introduce Guzai's consciousness into Chen Mo's body and suck him into a dried corpse. Guzai's move was to leave no way for his disciples to survive. If Chen Mo continued to impact the supernatural power stage, it would be tantamount to actively seeking death, so he immediately stopped the idea of impacting the bottleneck. The source of the divine consciousness is confirmed to be the host's chief master Guzai. The technique used contains the shadow of the ancient alchemists. The specific reference to the magic model is being confirmed. It takes 13 seconds. Please avoid the sharp edge and do not alarm Guzai's divine consciousness. Under the mark of the chip, Chen Mo, who is in the state of introspection, saw something strange in the sea of qi. The pool of blood left when Ronku cordyceps died began to rotate slowly without wind, forming a smooth ring in the counterclockwise direction, and its inner circle was silver-white. It was like a wide-open cave door, from which Guzai's silver-white divine consciousness flowed out continuously, like a glutton, conquering the city in Chen Mo's sea of qi. With a light sweep, the silver-white divine consciousness cut off the catharsis of the 3 elements of essence, qi and spirit in Chen Mo's body, and all the overflowing energy was enclosed in the sea of qi. Externally, the swelling of Chen Mo's flesh and sea of consciousness subsided, and he felt much better. The only problem was the sea of qi. Due to the accumulation of a large amount of spirit, energy and spirit, its outer wall has expanded to the limit. Even with Chen Mo's physical quality, it has reached the point where it can't bear it. It seems that in the next second, the sea of qi will rupture and explode to death. Chen Mo finally understood why the previous generations of Guzai's disciples of the Gu grass lineage died without a complete body and blood and flesh flew after failing to break through the supernatural power period. Being invaded by Guzai's consciousness like this, it would be strange if he didn't die. He not only wants to plunder the spirit of his disciples through Ronku cordyceps, but also kill people. Guzai, you beast in human clothing, you are unworthy of being a teacher. Chen Mo watched the silver-white consciousness sweeping his sea of qi like a glutton, continuously transporting all the energy that could be swallowed back to the emerging doorway. His eyes were bloodshot. His killing intent towards Guzai has never been so strong. The relationship between the two of them, where the master is not like the master and the disciple is not like the disciple, finally came to an end at this moment when the dagger was revealed. A little impatience can ruin a big plan. In order to counter Guzai, please continue to be patient for a few seconds. In the state of inner vision, Chen Mo felt for the first time that the passage of time was so slow. Even with the chip constantly reminding him, he almost couldn't resist the desire to attack Guzai's consciousness. Facing this shameless master who was so greedy and painstakingly calculating his own disciples, Chen Mo was furious. Even if he couldn't win, he had to draw his sword and fight him to the death. Finally, the chip's analysis was completed. The model of the alchemist's technique that Guzai borrowed from has been located. It is borrowing body resonance, which uses the creatures that have been sacrificed with great effort as anchors and the dream world as a bridge to establish a short-term non-material connection between the caster and the recipient. The ultimate secret door left by Guzai is different from the borrowing body resonance technique that can only be performed by alchemists in the supernatural power period. It is suspected to be a subsequent repaired version of the incomplete borrowing body resonance technique. There are systemic defects, and countermeasures have begun. Having just obtained the complete alchemist inheritance, the chip is very familiar with the skills of such ghosts and monsters at the soul level. In just a dozen seconds, it recognized the past and present of Guzai's harvesting technique. If Guzai had not modified borrowing body resonance, the chip would have completed the identification and formulation of a countermeasure plan within 3 seconds. This is the difference between fragmented learning and systematic learning. Guzai, most likely, accidentally got the fragment of the borrowing body resonance magic model in the soul burial abyss, and modified it with his personal knowledge in the late stage of supernatural power to form the secret art of Ronku cordyceps, which harvests the cultivation results of his disciples. The chip, on the other hand, has received the complete inheritance of the ancient alchemists, and at least has an 80% to 90% understanding of all the alchemist knowledge below the condensation pill stage. It can not only identify Guzai's ghostly tricks, but also counterattack, so that he will shoot himself in the foot. If Chen Mo and Guzai's identities and cultivation levels are swapped, and the chip uses the alchemist's means to attack, it can even make Guzai lose his life in a daze. The chip finally gave a reliable response plan, and Chen Mo breathed a sigh of relief. Even if he is now in a disadvantageous state of being invaded by alien consciousness in the Sea of Qi, it doesn't matter. With a chip, everything will be fine. This is stable. Guzai, wait for death? Chen Mo thought darkly, and regained a calm state of mind, appreciating how the chip used the force to fight the force and strangled Guzai's consciousness in his own Sea of Qi. The latest novel is first published on the 69th Book Forum. Link. Due to the absolute power gap between Guxi and the host, the headlong expulsion method will not end well. The host's Qi will definitely be blown into powder in the conflict, so we choose the plan number 2 with a relatively low risk factor. The chip has formulated more than 100 plans, and Chen Mo's requirements also mention 3 points: maximize the energy preservation of Ranku cordyceps, minimize its own damage, and maximize the damage to Guxi. After a brief pause, the chip chose a third-party intervention plan called Dream Intervention Method. According to the instructions, Chen Mo's consciousness took the initiative to push the 3 flowers that gathered most of the spirit, energy and spirit to Guxi's consciousness, causing him to temporarily ignore the original owner of the expelled Qi and greedily move Chen Mo's practice results aside. Taking advantage of this gap, Chen Mo's consciousness drew a mysterious divine pattern on the outside of the silver-white doorway, which completely enveloped Guzai's consciousness. Communication, dream world. This is an ancient divine pattern. Chen Mo has not learned it for a while. At this time, he can only imitate and draw it under the guidance of the chip, so it takes a long time, and the written words are also crooked. The last point is completed, and a divine pattern is engraved and begins to shine with a dark light. After thousands and tens of thousands of years, the simple ancient characters finally bloom with their former power again, on the west coast of Xianfang continent. Chapter 234, Dream World Counterattack. The first target of the ancient divine pattern after many years of reappearance is Guzai, who is in the late stage of supernatural power. A simple divine pattern, with his soul as the pen, is completed in less than 4 strokes, but it contains countless mysterious information. Ordinary Kigen practitioners will feel dizzy if they glance at it with their consciousness as the eyes. The soul emits a faint dark light, which continues to spread in Chen Mo's Sea of Qi. Indistinctly, it establishes a brief connection with a strange world. It is a magical world between illusion and reality. There are countless pale figures appearing and disappearing from time to time. Their shapes are also strange. There are eyeless faces with thousands of arms, a combination of mermaids walking upside down with one hand, and a mountain cat without eyes, ears and tails. All theorems and common sense of the real world are distorted by the unknown power of rules in this strange world. When the consciousness only touched a shallow corner of this distorted and illusory world, Chen Mo felt a great terror, as if he would be pulled over by the huge suction from it in the next second. Reason told him that if a trace of his consciousness fell into this strange space and time called dream world, with his insignificant strength, he would surely fall into darkness and die. Looking at those bizarre creatures, Chen Mo knew that they were existences that ordinary creatures could not afford to fend. Taking the creatures of the natural world where the strong prey on the weak as an example, all the monsters that surpassed the aesthetics of ordinary creatures, were extremely weird and unique, either gradually died and became extinct, or were extremely powerful and lived in various ways. Through his consciousness, seeing these strange dream world creatures that were alive and well, Chen Mo knew that they belonged to the latter. If he lived in the same room with them, he would definitely die. You can't enter the dream world, absolutely not. Only senior alchemists can slightly set foot in this forbidden area. Alchemists like those in the supernatural power period can only communicate with their consciousness briefly, see the leopard through the tube, and use the information emitted from the surface of the dream world creatures to better sacrifice the evil spirits. According to records from ancient times, evil spirits that exist in the world as spirits are the closest to the natives of the dream world among all creatures. Perhaps ordinary evil spirits will naturally fall into the dream world when they are distorted to a certain extent. Tracing back to the source, drawing a cat on a tiger, in order to pursue power, many ancient alchemists carefully and greedily used the dream world to enrich their means of using the power of evil spirits. In the process of seeking knowledge, Affected by the unknown existence of the dream world, there are many people who died in strange ways, just like carp crossing the river. Therefore, for the safety of the alchemists, reaching the stage of supernatural power is the lowest red line for observing and perceiving the dream world. Chen Mo has not yet broken through the supernatural power stage, and he has released the magic method of communicating with the dream world across levels. Not to mention the danger, the energy consumption alone has already greatly overdrawn the source. The spirit in the body is constantly flowing away, and the body is shrinking at a speed visible to the naked eye. As soon as his own resistance weakened, Chen Mo immediately felt that the pulling force from the dream world had increased a lot, using his consciousness as a medium, gradually pulling himself into it. The host can only hold on for 3 seconds at most. Please act immediately and send Guzai's consciousness into the dream world as a scapegoat. Due to the unknown interference from the dream world, the prompt sound of the chip also became blurred. Fortunately, it had transmitted the self-rescue method to Chen Mo in advance. Even without instructions, Chen Mo knew what to do next. While he could still control his own consciousness, Chen Mo moved his mind and pushed his remaining consciousness to Guzai's consciousness in the Sea of Qi, which was still greedily devouring the 3 flowers of essence, energy and spirit. With a bang, Chen Mo seemed to hear the wail of his own Sea of Qi, and then his consciousness felt pain, his eyes went black, and he involuntarily exited the state of internal vision. After taking a breath and looking into his Qi Sea again, Chen Mo discovered that most of the 3 flowers of spirit, energy and soul left by Ranku Cordyceps after his death were still there, but Guxi's silver-white consciousness had disappeared. The energy harvesting channel he had established through the secret door on Ranku Cordyceps' body had also disappeared. The danger of being harvested was resolved, but Chen Mo's face was still very ugly. Because he knew that after this incident, he and this nominal cheat master had completely torn their faces apart, and there was no room for maneuver. I must not return to the Blood Robe sect, I must betray the sect. Guxi will be angry and chase me down if he fails to harvest his own disciples. Chen Mo sighed, feeling that his future was bleak. Demon Cub, once you betray the demon sect, the righteous will not welcome you, unless you change your appearance, use the yin-yang mask, disguise yourself as a casual cultivator with a clean background, and seek shelter in the righteous sect. However, in this case, the extremely strict identity check could not be avoided. Facing the divine sense bone-touching and detection of the divine power cultivator, Chen Mo was not 100% sure to fool through. If he chose to become a casual cultivator without a backstage, he would not be able to deter Guzai at all. He would definitely chase Chen Mo to death. Chen Mo thought that even though he was one of the best in the Kigan practitioners, he was still far behind Guzai, who was in the late stage of divine power. Once he was blocked by him, there was only one way to go. But Chen Mo was unwilling to keep his tail between his legs and hide his identity. How is this passive way of escape different from deceiving oneself? How can he make progress bravely and climb to the top of the immortal path? Host, please rest assured that Guzai is probably already in the dream world and will never be reborn. The influence of the dream world is extraordinary. Chen Mo thought about it for a long time before the chip finally reacted and spoke out the speculation to comfort Chen Mo, who was confused about the future. Before it was completely blocked by the dream world, the chip captured the reaction of Guxi's consciousness with the help of Chen Mo's consciousness. The silver-white Guxi consciousness entered the dream world site the moment it was hit by Chen Mo's consciousness, and was firmly stuck by the indiscriminate pulling force from the dream world. With a Guxi consciousness with higher cultivation, stronger energy, and bigger goals in front, Chen Mo's weak consciousness seemed particularly inconspicuous in contrast. As Chen Mo took the initiative to cancel the magic to communicate with the dream world, he unilaterally cut off the connection with the strange world. The powerful section of the dream world disappeared instantly and turned to the Guxi consciousness on the side. Without suspense, Guxi's consciousness became Chen Mo's scapegoat, being pulled by the traction of the dream world and gradually disappeared from the Sea of Qi. Chen Mo, this cheap master, only learned the superficial techniques of the alchemist through the fragments of magic that he got by chance. He didn't know what the dream world was and how to cut off his connection with it. Therefore, in the blink of an eye, the part of Guzai's consciousness that invaded Chen Mo's Qi Sea was pulled into the dream world. The chip faintly recorded a hoarse scream that belonged to Guzai. "Evil disciple, how dare you!" Through the vague sound replayed by the chip, Chen Mo tasted Guzai's anger, resentment, and disbelief. The consciousness is originally one, Except in extreme cases, it can be divided into two. However, the pulling force of the dream world has the ability to track absolutely. Even if the practitioner's consciousness is split, it cannot escape the fate of falling into the dream world. Guzai will definitely be pulled into the dream world. The probability is 100%. Please return to the sect without worry. Although there was no personal collection of the scene of Guzai falling into the dream world, the chip has already issued him a death notice. This is the reason why everyone has his own specialty. The dream world, as a sandwich between the real world and the world of consciousness, can only be mastered by practitioners who specialize in the way of alchemy. Even if Guzai's cultivation has reached a late stage of supernatural power, facing such a special attack from a non-professional field, there is no way, and he can only bear it. However, the method of communicating with the dream world and pushing the opponent into it as a scapegoat has many restrictions when used. It needs to meet a series of harsh conditions. That is, when Guzai used the borrowing body resonance technique to harvest Chen Mo's spirit, energy and spirit, it barely met the conditions for casting. If he had not taken the initiative to leave a silver-white spiritual consciousness connection channel, and if he had used the exclusive technique of the alchemist, Chen Mo would not have been able to secretly plot against Guzai, whose cultivation was far higher than his. Borrowing body resonance ignores physical distance and establishes a connection between the spiritual consciousness of practitioners at both ends of the world. It has already touched the edge of the dream world. Otherwise, how could Guzai harvest Chen Mo's spirit, energy and spirit from a distance of thousands of miles? But the principle behind this is known to the chip, but not to Guzai, so he fell. Using the dream world as a medium is the essence of borrowing body resonance. Guzai did not receive the complete inheritance of the alchemist, and only knew how to use it rigidly, without understanding the principle. He was pushed into the dream world by Chen Mo, which was completely his own fault. The latest novel is first published in Liujiu 9 Shishuba. Ling. Guxi's foolish behavior completely violates Article 234 of the Alchemist Code. Please take it as a warning. The original text is as follows: the use, cultivation, and confrontation of the soul are full of dangers. All alchemists should use their spiritual consciousness with caution to contact strange beings, otherwise, the dream world will open the door to death for you. If you are not an alchemist, you are not allowed to use the magic model that is unique to alchemists. Remember, when the chip read the original text of The Rules of the Alchemist, the tone was cold and mechanical, without a trace of emotion. When it fell into Chen Mo's ears, it was a chill, a layer of biting chill, along the coccyx, all the way to the top of the head, allowing this beginner who had only mastered the basic techniques of an alchemist apprentice to have a deeper understanding of the way of the alchemist. Learn from the lessons of the past, watch carefully, and learn well. Be careful, and be careful again. Chen Mo muttered to himself with his eyes blank, not knowing whether choosing the path of the alchemist was a blessing or a curse. The greater the risk, the greater the reward. For the practitioners of the way of the alchemist, everything is so dangerous, then isn't it even more terrifying to use the alchemist's techniques to deal with practitioners of other paths? I must master this kind of power, otherwise how can I climb to the top of the immortal path? But within half a cup of tea, Chen Mo's Taoism heart regained its firmness. He broke free from the confusion of gains and losses, and asked himself the original intention of embarking on the path of immortality. Just by communicating with the dream world, this one operation can send Guzai, who is in the late stage of supernatural power, into the dream world where non-alchemists have a chance of death. If he can be released at will without restriction, who can be his opponent? Of course, Chen Mo can only fantasize about such unrealistic fantasies. If this kind of magic can be developed, the alchemists would have shined in the ancient times, and they could even use it to enslave practitioners of other paths, and the inheritance would not be cut off after tens of millions of years. But it's better for the blood robe sect to go back later. Otherwise, if Guzai is lucky and does not fall into the dream world and returns to the sect with a seriously injured body, he will definitely send the deacon of the discipline hall to kill me, the unfilial disciple who betrayed his teacher and destroyed his ancestors. Although the chip has determined that Guzai's death is an inevitable event, Chen Mo is still worried. After all, you only have one life, so you should cherish it. It won't be a big deal to return to the sect later. However, when Chen Mo was about to leave the bottom of Kangling Lake and find a quiet and secluded place to digest the inheritance of the alchemist, he felt a hit in his arms and suddenly shot out a communication talisman. "Brother, The soul and life tablet left by the master in the Gugrass lineage suddenly shattered. The sect then sounded the death knell and wailed to express its condolences. Please return to the sect as soon as possible. If it's too late, you won't get a share of the inheritance. A line of scribbled characters appeared in front of Chen Mo, which made his still uneasy heart calm down instantly. The soul and life tablet contains a trace of the practitioner's original soul. Once it is shattered, the soul will be annihilated, and there will be no chance of possessing another body, reincarnation, or rebirth. Guzai, you are finally dead and can't die anymore. The smile on Chen Mo's lips grew wider and wider, and he let out a long and hearty roar, releasing all the negative emotions in his heart. For many years, the shadow that Guzai had cast over his had finally dissipated, and what made Chen Mo even happier was that he had personally sent his cheap master off. According to the few records about the inheritance law of the Blood Robe sect in the article, The Devil's Self-Cultivation, if the host wants to obtain the relics that Guzai has stored in the Gugrass lineage, he must seize the throne of the Gugrass lineage master by force from the many covetors. Otherwise, he can only continue to enjoy the basic welfare of the sect as a direct disciple of the former lineage master of the Gugrass lineage, and he will not be able to get even a penny of Guzai's legacy. It is recommended that the host break through the magical power period as soon as possible, compete for the throne of the 19th generation lineage master of the Gugrass lineage, and inherit Guzai's legacy. The chip immediately designed a route for Chen Mo to maximize his benefits, and he readily agreed. The chip estimated that most of the three elements of essence, energy and spirit left behind by Ranku Cordyceps after its death were still there, enough for Chen Mo to break through to the stage of supernatural powers. Therefore, he seized the time and did not hesitate to use his energy to perform the six-winged yin spirit wings, riding the clouds and mist, and left Kangling Lake. The previous life and death race with his sword puppet had caused a commotion that was heard within a radius of more than 10 miles. If he attracted practitioners with ill intentions and disturbed Chen Mo's impact on the stage of supernatural powers, the consequences would be extremely dangerous, so he had better leave early. Due to the abundant energy, Chen Mo still had the spare energy to perform an enhanced version of the breath-concealing technique for the six-winged yin spirit wings, completely concealing his own flight trajectory, so that no trace was left when flying at high altitude. Chapter 235 Impact. After flying for more than 100 miles, Chen Mo was in midair and chose a remote wasteland with a very low concentration of spiritual energy. He decided to go into seclusion there. He was holding a piece of Yinling spring in his hand. When he was breaking through the supernatural power stage, the demand for spiritual energy was not high. Choosing a wasteland with spiritual energy could minimize the interference of external creatures on himself and successfully go into seclusion. All the way here, the chip roughly scanned it. Within a radius of dozens of miles, there was not even a first-class monster beast that could understand the mystery of spiritual energy. They were all stupid beasts and unknown small wild beasts. The threat to Chen Mo was extremely high. In the rating of the chip, it was almost comparable to that of the subcontinent, with thin spiritual energy and lack of resources. Looking at the location of this place, it was just at the junction of the sphere of influence of the cultivation world and the Kangzhou border of the Kyanitian Empire. Although it was not a battleground for the two sides, it was sparsely populated and extinct because of the wars that broke out from time to time. Chen Mo's landing point was right at the edge of the battle line that stretched for thousands of miles between the two warring parties. While meeting the above conditions, it was also very hidden, making it the best place for retreat. According to common sense, even if there were practitioners passing by, they would not want to stay here for long, because the spiritual energy content in the air was too low. For practitioners with higher cultivation, the more suffocating and uncomfortable it was. Chen Mo nodded with satisfaction, and dived down, hitting the yellowish earth ground like a meteorite. The yin spiritual energy was released in the area 10 feet in front of him, forming a thin film, which began to corrode the soil in the ground. The ordinary soil and ordinary stone had no power to stop the corrosive effect of the yin spiritual energy. As he dived all the way down, the long, one-person-wide passage left behind by Chen Mo was shattered and collapsed by his dark energy, which effectively eliminated the traces of his passage. The soil layer was torn apart layer by the yin spiritual energy, and after Chen Mo passed by, it collapsed again in sections, just like before. In just a few thousand breaths, Chen Mo had dug out a hollow stone chamber 100 meters underground as a temporary retreat. Puff, 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 He inserted a number of formation flagpoles, and a cave mansion protection formation that concealed the aura and had a certain defensive function took shape, firmly supporting the rock wall above to prevent Chen Mo from being buried alive by the soil layer during retreat. For more than 4 years, the Gurum breeding farm, which made a fortune every day, brought Chen Mo a lot of income. The set of Phantom Spirit Array, composed of the mother flag and 12 sub-flags he took out at this time, was the top quality goods he had bought from the sect market not long ago at a high price. He arranged more than 10 mid-level water spirit stones one by one in each corner of this underground space, according to the requirements of the formation diagram. Soon, a layer of light mist completely covered Chen Mo's retreat. Even if a cultivator in the divine power stage used his divine sense to explore through the thick mud and stone layer, he would not be able to find Chen Mo's hiding place with a high probability, unless he made too much noise when he broke through the divine power stage, and the spiritual light shot straight into the sky, which could guide the direction to those who were interested. This is the power of the spiritual stone, which allows Chen Mo to retreat with peace of mind. This formation costs more than 10 mid-level spiritual stones to operate once, plus the high cost of the Phantom Spirit Array itself. If there is no income support from the Gurum breeding farm, Chen Mo cannot afford it. The daily spiritual stone welfare of the Gu grass lineage alone is not enough. It can be said that Chen Mo used a pile of spiritual stones to smash out a safe practice environment. There is no table, chair, or cushion in the cave, and the layout is so simple that he can only sit cross-legged on the uneven mud ground. But he didn't care at all. He didn't spend extra time polishing this retreat. Instead, he took out the Yinling spring from his storage bag and placed it beside him while the residual energy of Ranku cordyceps in the Sea of Qi had not disappeared. The gurgling sound of flowing water came from the spring, which was particularly pleasant. The rich yin spiritual energy exuded instantly transformed this simple temporary cave into a holy place for cultivation. With the embellishment of the Yinling spring, even without the decoration of talismans, and spiritual plants, this underground cave is also a retreat treasure land that countless practitioners flock to. It is exactly in line with the saying, mountains are not high, but they are famous if there are immortals. Water is not deep, but it is magical if there are dragons. Whether it is immortals or dragons, they are all great masters. They are extremely demanding about the living environment. Isn't the place they are willing to live in a blessed place with abundant spiritual energy? Even if the original concentration of spiritual energy is very low, they will transform it into a holy place for cultivation with a concentration of spiritual energy not lower than that of the spiritual spring. In this way, wouldn't the mountains and rivers be both famous and spiritual? Everything is ready. With the comprehensive conditions of retreat, Chen Mo has already reached a first-class level among the numerous high-level Kigan practitioners. As for the conditions for the next level of impact, Chen Mo does not have a deep family background, so he does not expect too much. Searching the database of alchemists' inheritance, I found a secret technique to temporarily increase the divine essence. At the same time, I simulated a small trick to perfectly control the unity of the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit. It is expected that the host's success rate in impacting the supernatural power period will reach 95.1%, which meets the minimum expectation. The chip timely proposed a time-tested success rate model for the impact, which made Chen Mo, who is ready for the impact, very happy. Due to the intervention of Guxi in this impact, the energy contained in Ranku cordyceps was not used 100%. Therefore, Chen Mo was not confident in winning with one blow, and even prepared for a success rate of less than 95%. His requirements were not high, and he did not insist on entering the supernatural power stage in one step. He only needed to reach the minimum requirement of the 12th level of key training. The latest novels were first published on the 69th book bar. Anyway, he was still young and had plenty of time to prepare. He did not need to rush. Therefore, the prompt sound before the chip impact became an unexpected surprise. The reasons why the host's success rate of impact has been greatly improved and the minimum impact conditions have been met are as follows. 1. With the inheritance of the alchemist, the divine essence value can be temporarily increased through secret techniques. 2. The three flowers of essence, energy and spirit left by Ranku cordyceps after death are the perfect model of the coexistence of the three elements in balance, providing a feasible experience model for the host to break through the bottleneck of the divine power period. 3. Although part of the energy left by Ranku cordyceps after death was stolen by Guzai, the stock is still enough for the host to break through, without burning its own lifespan. After receiving the specific analysis of the chip, Chen Mo felt relieved and immediately emptied his mind, preparing to impact the divine power period with his whole body. In the sea of consciousness, the chip had already prepared the soul excitement model to temporarily increase the divine essence. Chen Mo simply injected the divine essence and felt a strong sense of transcendence of consciousness beyond the flesh. This is a calm experience of having everything under control, as if an omniscient and omnipotent God can control the rhythm of every pore in the body, and even the space around the body can be influenced. The world in front of Chen Mo has become different. Chapter 236 Supernatural Power. Ling. The host caste's soul excitement and the spirit essence has increased significantly, reaching 15.0. Please pay attention to restrain the excitement of the spirit to prevent the blood and qi from rushing back into the head and exploding the head to death. The chip reminded Chen Mo to control his emotions and also used physical means to cool him down. He felt a cold current sweeping through his body from the top of his head, instantly extinguishing his uncontrollable excitement. The evil fire, lust, and passion in his heart were swept away by the chip. Chen Mo regained his calm and indifferent mentality and began to calmly improve his essence and qi. Compared with the spirit, the temporary enhancement of the body and the sea of qi is very simple. With the endless pure yin spirit provided by the yin spirit spring and the large amount of blood and flesh energy left after the death of the cordyceps sinensis, Chen Mo's qi and essence, like taking a tonic, are rising steadily. Ling. Establish a dynamic model of the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit, with a ratio of 1.5 to 1.5. Please inject the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit at the same time according to the model in your mind. Please be strict and make sure to do it, not a drop more, not a drop less. 3 lifelike flower buds appeared in Chen Mo's mind. Their arrangement order, number of petals, and color depth were exactly the same as the 3 flowers of spirit, energy and spirit left after the death of Ranku cordyceps. If it weren't for the chip, who would have thought of or dared to try to use the 3 flowers of spirit, energy and spirit condensed after the death of the goo worm as a template to control their own 3-dimensional data and impact the life and death bottleneck of the supernatural power period? Through repeated calculations and comparisons with other spirit arrangement models, the chip finally confirmed that only by strictly following the 3-flower model naturally formed after the death of Ranku cordyceps to match the 3 elements of spirit, energy and spirit can Chen Mo's success rate in impacting the supernatural power period be maximized. It can be said that the great way of heaven and earth is all in nature and living beings. Sometimes, a small insect can give endless inspiration to practitioners and help them break through the bottlenecks of practice. Fortune and misfortune are interdependent. Although the premature death of Ranku cordyceps caused Chen Mo a series of troubles, it also provided him with an idea to increase the success rate of the impact of the supernatural power period. With a chip responsible for execution, all hypothetical ideas can become reality. Chen Mo's surging essence, qi, and spirit, under the control of his calm mentality, all obeyed obediently and condensed into 3 energy flowers of different colors, which appeared in Chen Mo's sea of qi, chest and sea of consciousness respectively. With the inspiration of Ranku cordyceps, the 3 energy flowers formed a delicate balance, allowing Chen Mo, whose 3-dimensional data of essence, qi and spirit reached an unprecedented height, to control the balance between them without spending a little more mind. Countless high-level qi practitioners failed at this step. They failed to control the riot of the skyrocketing spirit, qi, and essence, resulting in energy imbalance and explosion in the body. At the least, they failed to impact the supernatural power period, and at the worst, they died without a burial place. Chen Mo, however, was inspired by Ranku cordyceps and passed the biggest hurdle of the divine power stage without any surprise. Everything that followed was a natural outcome. Chen Mo quietly waited for the 3 energy flowers to bear abundant fruits. Time passed by bit by bit. The red flower of essence, the silver-white flower of spirit, and the dark black flower of qi each occupied a corner of Chen Mo's body, slowly rotating, and the 3-color halo emitted faintly condensed into 3 crystal fruits the size of agate. A crisp click sounded, and the fruit broke off at the point where it touched the root of the 3 flowers of essence, spirit, and fell to the qi sea, the sea of consciousness, and the chest of the flesh below. The 3 flowers of different colors also withered at the moment when they were ripe, representing the massive loss of Chen Mo's spirit, and spirit. The whole body sitting cross-legged instantly became extremely old and hunched. This is the external manifestation of overdrawing the origin, But Chen Mo still has a vigorous vitality ready to go, indicating that his vitality is still there, and there is still enough lifespan to support him to push open the door to the supernatural power stage. This is the second pass to impact the bottleneck of the supernatural power stage. It is less difficult than the former, but it is also full of dangers. I don't know how many Kigen practitioners who have failed to impact the supernatural power stage have died at this level, because they do not have enough life energy to launch the final sprint for the supernatural power stage. Their lifelong spirit, energy, and spirit have long been consumed before the previous energy balance threshold. But Chen Mo is different. Although his body seems to be weak and rotten like an octogenarian, the vitality under his skin is incomparably vigorous. Just like an old tree before the spring rain, it will pull out new branches and buds when the rain and dew fall, and be reborn. The dormancy at this moment is for the blooming of the next second. The supernatural power stage is a huge leap in the level of life. Without going through such a process of rebirth, how can we usher in the future of a lifespan of 500 years? With his eyes closed, in the darkness, his mind was his eyes and his consciousness was his guide. Chen Mo finally came into contact with a world that belonged exclusively to the cultivators in the supernatural power stage. Supernatural power, a call from the deepest part of whose cells exploded in Chen Mo's heart, like the thunder of the creation of the world, breaking through the darkness in front of his eyes, allowing him to see the light from a higher realm. Break. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. With a shout, Chen Mo's sea of ki, sea of consciousness, and body all vibrated at the same time, instantly shattering the spirit, energy, and spirit 3 flower fruit that had just fallen, and injecting the energy contained in it into every cell around Chen Mo. The miracle of life appeared. Chen Mo's body skin cracked inch by inch, revealing the white skin underneath that was as crystal clear as beautiful jade, as exquisite and unique as carefully carved jade porcelain. The blood flowing in the blood vessels and the bone marrow in the spine all made a gurgling sound of liquid flowing, renewing the worn and flawed parts of themselves one after another, emitting a crystal light that lasted for 100 years. As for the bones that supported Chen Mo's skin and flesh, they changed significantly. On the basis of the ice-like muscles and jade-like bones created by the Yinsha corpse wrapping method, they took another step forward and honed themselves to be more crystal clear, reflecting the golden brilliance faintly through the obstruction of flesh and blood. This was a body renewal that started from the cells and swept through Chen Mo's body. It was far better than the so-called Yijing marrow cutting in the foundation of martial arts. Moreover, due to Chen Mo's own solid foundation of body refining, it was even stronger, making his physical foundation more solid. The transformation from the physical body began to spread to the Qi sea and the sea of consciousness, where the life gate of the practitioner was located. As the prompt sound of the chip continued to sound, Chen Mo's Qi Yuan and Shen Yuan also increased significantly with different degrees along with the Jing Yuan. Quietly, all three passed the 12.0 mark. After a few breaths, Chen Mo's three-dimensional data froze quietly after the burst state dissipated. Ling. Host Chen Mo, early stage of supernatural power, essence. 13.5, 15, energy. 14.3, 20, spirit. 13.1, 15, status, healthy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 237 Arrogance Departure. Ling. The value in the parentheses is the final data of the three dimensions of the host's spirit, energy and spirit after the host's realm is consolidated. Even if you don't practice hard, you will naturally reach it in 10 years as time goes by. There is still a lot of room for improvement. Even so, please don't slack off and continue to practice hard to reach this three-dimensional value as soon as possible. The prompt sound of the chip explained to Chen Mo the huge gains of this advancement, allowing him to clearly see from the data how huge the gap is between the cultivators in the early stage of supernatural power and the key cultivators who have reached the great perfection of the 12th level of key training. Once the three-dimensional data exceeds the 10.0 mark, every 0.01 improvement is a small improvement. After Chen Mo's realm stabilized, the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit were fixed at 15, 20, and 15 respectively, which was a full half a decade higher than before the impact of the supernatural power period. The resulting combat power gap is like a world of difference. In addition, According to the calculation of the chip, Chen Mo's final three-dimensional data is amplified by the ratio of the three elements of spirit, energy and spirit injected when he entered the supernatural power stage, just like the ratio of 1.5 to 1.5 of spirit, energy and spirit matched with the three flowers of Ranku cordyceps. Therefore, the three-dimensional fixed values of spirit, energy and spirit of different Kigen practitioners after advancing to the supernatural power stage are different, depending on their three-dimensional numerical ratios at the time of impact, which includes both accidental luck factors and personal strength factors, such as whether they can control their own spirit, energy and spirit. This has caused a huge difference in strength between the cultivators in the early stage of supernatural power. Those who perform well in the impact process can even fight one against many. And Chen Mo's gorgeous three-dimensional data all show that he has firmly stood in the position of big brother among the cultivators who have just entered the supernatural power stage. This is the advantage of the spirit, energy and spirit ratio data provided by the chip, which makes him one step ahead at the starting line of the supernatural power stage. Not to mention, there is also a greater gap opened by the natural growth of three-dimensional data over time. Starting from different points, naturally the future progress will be different. When Chen Mo started at the magical power stage, he already had a great advantage over the same level, and his age was relatively young. As long as he made steady progress, he would be the best in this realm in the future. As for another decisive factor that determines the true combat power of the cultivator, the innate magical power, it is even more worthy of being written about and repeatedly studied. However, Chen Mo, who had just broken through, suppressed the desire to practice the innate magical power in the retreat. Instead, he stood up, soared into the sky from the mud layer, shook the six-winged yin spirit wings, and flew to the mountain gate of the blood-clothed sect. It has taken a lot of time to retreat and impact the magical power stage. The competition for the 19th generation of the Gu Grass lineage is imminent. Chen Mo does not want to miss the opportunity to inherit the Gu Creek legacy because of a temporary itch. The cultivator's use of innate magical power is like a fish swimming, a bird flying, and a mouse digging a hole. It is an innate instinct, as simple as eating and drinking. Even if the chip does not help, Chen Mo will not practice it once and use it directly against the enemy, and there will be no problem. In comparison, returning to the sect is more urgent. The throne of the leader of the Gukeo lineage and the huge inheritance are owed to me by Guxi, who is my cheat master. Even if he has died in the dream world, I must personally collect the debt. Chen Mo's mind was in the air, and he roared to the sky, venting the gloomy mood that had been suppressed by Guxi for many years. The penetrating roar shook the clouds in the sky into fine ripples. With the cultivation of the supernatural power period, he was able to break away from the status of cannon fodder in the Blood Robe sect. The cultivation of the initial stage of supernatural power and the higher combat power, even if placed in the West Coast Demon Dale where there are a lot of demons, is still the mainstay, and can determine the direction of a small battle between good and evil or the battle against Kainan. Previously, although Chen Mo was a direct disciple of the Gukeo lineage and a direct descendant of the Blood Robe sect, he enjoyed a certain amount of sect resources, which was far stronger than the poor inner and outer disciples, but he was ultimately enrolled in the sect. But after entering the stage of supernatural power, he has the possibility to participate in the distribution of sect interests and vote on major issues. After all, the great elders of the condensation dance stage, who are high above and pursuing a higher realm, have no time to deal with these trivial issues of sect interest distribution and development planning. Anyway, every time the cake is divided, as the first person in the sect, he must be the first to take a bite, and he wants the most, and no one dares to say anything. Then the heads of each branch and the deacons of the sect are the second candidates to participate in the distribution of the cake. As long as Chen Mo can earn the title of Gusieo Vein Head, he can become a member of the sect's senior level with the identity of a new demon who has just entered the supernatural power. As a direct disciple of the former Vein Head of the Gusieo Vein, Chen Mo has natural legitimacy and priority in terms of identity, and what's more, no one in the whole sect knows his dark history of deceiving his teacher and ancestors, and killing Guzai. Although in the demon sect, this kind of bad behavior is not one of the three major crimes such as surrendering to the Dragon Court, associating with aliens, and rebellion against the righteous path, and no one is holding this small braid, it is also good to have one less thing to criticize. After all, Chen Mo has just entered the supernatural power period, and is far from being able to suppress all the same level existences in the supernatural power period, so that they dare not speak out. As a cultivator in the supernatural power period, Chen Mo did not conceal his whereabouts when flying. A dark shadow left an ugly scar in the white low clouds. At the junction of Kainigan and the demon sect forces under his feet, many people noticed Chen Mo's whereabouts from a distance of dozens or hundreds of miles. A group of military soldiers wandering on the border of Kangzhou in the Kainigan Empire looked up and saw this terrifying black rainbow in the sky. Under the shouting of the old soldiers, they all curled up quickly like groundhogs, and found caves, tree holes, and piles of rocks to hide. Only one new recruit, who had just joined the army, still had hair on the corners of his mouth and had little battlefield experience, was shocked by his comrades' sudden actions and didn't know what to do. Even out of curiosity, he began to pay attention to the movement in the sky, widening his eyes, trying to see the figure of Chen Mo at the top of the black rainbow. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. This kind of suicidal behavior of a newborn calf who is not afraid of a tiger, even the comrades behind him couldn't stand it. An old soldier stood up from his hiding place, regardless of hurting the new recruit, and grabbed his collar fiercely, dragging him and his equipment to the hiding place. "You idiot, are you looking for death? If you attract the demon from the sky, how many heads do you have for him to chop off? Even Lord Wuzun may not be able to take down such an arrogant demon. Do you want to kill our entire team?" When the old soldier said demon, he subconsciously lowered his voice, as if he was afraid of being heard by the terrifying existence in the sky. Then, as if Chen Mo had brought back terrifying memories, he shivered and held down the struggling recruit with all his might, counting the time silently, waiting for the demon from the sky to leave. The old soldier's rough hand held his neck. The recruit still wanted to struggle, but he couldn't get away. After a while, his face turned red and he gave up the futile struggle. The host's whereabouts are too arrogant and have been noticed by many ordinary people and Kigan practitioners. According to calculations, the risk factor is 0. Please feel free to control the 6-winged yin spirit wings. This group of Kainigan border soldiers had no idea that their every move had already been discovered by the high and mighty demon Chen Mo, but he just didn't bother to crush these ants on the side of the road. Chapter 238, The Not-So-Simple Blood Robe Sect. The chip's prompt made Chen Mo notice the people below. They are so tiny. After Chen Mo became a cultivator of the divine power stage, he flew again, and his state of mind was very different from when he was still a Kigan practitioner. In the past, even if he had the 6-winged yin spirit wings on his back and flew away, Chen Mo still had a sense of uneasiness about hiding from others and being afraid of being attacked by others. How could it be compared with the carefreeness of today? On the West Coast, if you are not a cultivator of the divine power stage, how dare you have the freedom of the sea is wide for fish to leap, and the sky is high for birds to fly? With the divine power stage, and being in the sphere of influence of the demon sect, even if it is the border area with the Kainigan Empire, Chen Mo's safety is highly guaranteed, and he does not have to care about the feelings, thoughts, or even sneak attacks of the people under his feet. Just the 3 advantages of being high above, controlling the wind, and traveling several miles in an instant have already opened up a huge gap between him and the people. As Chen Mo's flying altitude continues to rise, the people have no chance of even touching a corner of his clothes. Even with the help of the Dragon Key Talisman, it won't work. Whether it's a key practitioner or a martial arts master of the Kainigan Empire, in Chen Mo's vision, they all became small black dots, just like a giant elephant glimpsing the ants under its feet, and there is no need to care about their existence. If the ants make a few noisy remarks without knowing the consequences, block the way he must pass, or even launch a tickling attack without knowing the consequences, Chen Mo will just spend some effort to crush them or step on them to death. Therefore, Chen Mo's mentality has long been detached from the secular world and ordinary key practitioners in the key training period, and he also understands why the magic cultivators in the supernatural power period in the sect treat the inner and outer disciples much better than the sect warriors' attitude towards the chores. After all, under the supernatural power, we are all ants. Chen Mo finally glanced at the Kangzhou land under his feet and sighed. Then, he also saw a huge city crawling like a giant beast on the southwest border of the Kainigan Empire, and thought of the promise he made in his early years. What is the surname of that woman? She helped me cleanse the impure spiritual veins in exchange for a chance to go out after I broke through the magical power period. It seems that she went to kill an unknown prince in Kangzhou. Let me think, what is her name? For the opposite sex object who has little use value, Chen Mo will not waste energy to remember their personal information. After thinking for a long time, he can't remember the voice and appearance of this woman. As for wasting the computing power of the chip, although it is very small, to look through the memory bank to retrieve the personal information of this woman, Chen Mo is too lazy to do so. A small mortal, and why spend so much energy? Just remember that there is a prince in Kangzhou waiting for you to take his head. It was just a deal in the early years, and Chen Mo was now capable, so he just fulfilled his promise and sought peace of mind. As for other contents, such as the woman's name and what deep hatred she had, there was no need to think too much. After advancing to the supernatural power stage, Chen Mo's mentality became more carefree and detached. He did not seek causes or results for all external disturbances, but only asked for "I am willing and I am happy." Being at ease is the greatest freedom. Isn't this what I have been striving for day and night, to break through the bottleneck of the supernatural power stage? Chen Mo asked in return, and felt that his mind was clear and he was more determined about his future path. After several hours, Chen Mo was in mid-air and saw the gloomy blood-clothed sect's spiritual veins from afar. With a higher level of cultivation, Chen Mo's knowledge and perception also increased. Looking at this sect where he went in and out every day, he felt a different taste and feeling. A word to describe it is Dragon's Lair. When assessing the trend of the blood-robe sect's spiritual veins and the layout of its buildings, Chen Mo accidentally put himself in the role of an outsider or invader, thinking about how he could sneak into the mountain gate, steal spiritual materials, or kill important figures in the sect. After becoming a cultivator in the divine power stage, his spiritual perception was enhanced by more than one level. As soon as Chen Mo's little malice emerged, he felt a great terror from the blood-robe sect. The strong sense of crisis even overwhelmed Chen Mo's perception, and he was so scared that he quickly gathered his mind and honestly looked at the mountain gate of the blood-robe sect again as an ordinary disciple of the demon sect. The stronger the strength, the more dangers that the key training stage disciples could not perceive, which was the murderous intent when the blood-robe sect was built. Chen Mo's forehead was covered with cold sweat. He really didn't know that when he was an inner and outer sect disciple, many of the ordinary places he passed by were full of murderous intentions. In a swamp on the beach that no one cared about, there was actually a nameless monster in the middle stage of supernatural power lurking. It sent a needle-like danger warning to Chen Mo, so that he suppressed the idea of extending his spiritual sense tentacles to take a peek. Of course, Chen Mo also felt the presence of the guardian spirit beast, the Stone Monkey King, who had met him several times before. It seemed to be integrated into every inch of the ground under his feet, and it was possible to break out of the ground at any time to protect the blood-clothed sect. The large bunk bed in the Jingsh, where the outer sect disciples gathered, was actually located above the center of a large formation. In addition to the fact that the various spiritual energies were a little richer than other places in the sect, it could also reverse when necessary to sacrifice all the creatures near the center of the formation and turn them into flesh and blood fuel for the enemy formation. Chen Mo saw the key to the killing array that he had ignored before, and was horrified. He had a deeper understanding of the blood-robe sect. The founder of the sect not only did not think about training the lower-level disciples well, but also had a dark idea of using them as flesh and blood fuel to deal with the sect's catastrophe and buy time for the sect's top leaders to escape. Being fuel is worse than being cannon fodder. The soul will be completely destroyed. This is the demon sect. It's hard for these lower-level disciples to sleep ignorantly in the center of the array that may become a meat grinder at any time. The latest novels are first published on Liuji 9 Shuba. You can still sleep in a dangerous place. I admire you. Chen Mo took a breath of cold air. He didn't know how to evaluate the cold-bloodedness of the founder of the blood-robe sect. At the same time, he was glad that he had become a master of the divine power stage early on, and he could be regarded as truly escaping the tragic fate of the bottom-level disciples in the eye of the formation. This group of ignorant people thought that the concentration of spiritual energy in the large bunk bed in the Jingsh was slightly higher, which was a welfare given by the sect out of kindness. Little did they know that this was to accumulate more energy for the formation under your feet. The gift of fate has long been secretly marked with a price. When the day comes, you will be required to pay it back with interest. Seeing through the mystery of this flesh and blood formation, Chen Mo sighed and didn't want to publicize the truth. Let this group of bottom-level disciples live in ignorant happiness. Maybe one day when the mountain gate of the blood-robe sect is broken, Chen Mo will still need this blood sacrifice disciple formation to delay time so that he can run away safely. This is the butt that determines the head. Chen Mo, who has become a cultivator in the divine power stage and is already a reserve for the sect's high-level officials, would not think of helping the lower-level disciples in the key training stage to improve their cultivation environment, increase their chances of breaking through, and reduce the mortality rate of sect missions. Chen Mo is already kind-hearted if he does not exploit these cheap laborers even more ruthlessly. Thinking of this, Chen Mo feels that he needs to quickly go to the Gukeo lineage's residence to inherit the legacy and compensate for his loss of kindness. This is the treasure of the sect that can really make him full. Chapter 239 Rivals. Calculate the time, the battle for the Vein Master is about to begin. You must become a regular as soon as possible and remove the word reserve from the sect's high-level reserve. As long as Chen Mo does not win the Vein Master, he will not be able to participate in the sect's decision-making. He has an empty position but no real benefits. For better development, he must win the position of Gukeo Vein Master. In the Blood Robe sect, compared with a limited number of Vein Masters and Deacons, who have power and resources, the number of supernatural power cultivators is still relatively large, forming a situation of more wolves and less meat. Therefore, every time a branch Vein Master position is vacant, there will be a fight between dragons and tigers, and it is not impossible that people will die. Among them, there are many early cultivators with the lowest cultivation level in the supernatural power period, and they are also Chen Mo's main competitors for the Gukeo Vein Master this time. Arriving at the foot of the sect's spiritual vein, Chen Mo gathered the 6-winged yin spirit wings, and walked briskly to the Gukeo Vein station deep in the mountain. Different from the activities of inner and outer disciples, as the important place of the sect where the spiritual vein is located, even the cultivators in the supernatural power stage must honestly abide by the no-fly rule and fly through the spiritual vein at low altitude at most. Those who do not abide by the rules will inevitably be attacked by the gate-guarding formation and the stone monkey, a spiritual beast with a cultivation of the late supernatural power. It seems that only the sect's supreme leader can fly freely in the Blood Robe sect without restraint. As he rushed along, the scene of the sect's spiritual vein was exactly the same as what Chen Mo saw and heard half a year ago. There were many exotic flowers and plants growing on both sides of the narrow path. They were all grown from seeds scattered by the people who settled in the spiritual vein. Of course, there were also waste products eliminated from their own caves. Although these flowers and plants could not be sold for a few spiritual stones, they were dangerous. For example, if a carnivorous beast catching Yinkeo accidentally broke into its hunting range, a warrior in the 5th grade supernatural power realm would be swallowed alive by the suddenly opened flower buds. As for the landscape spiritual plants and insects such as the human-faced flower, the weeping grass, and the devil-crying fireflies, they turned the sect's spiritual vein into a gloomy and terrifying place, testing the nerves of every passerby. Chen Mo would not be scared by these little things. In fact, as a direct disciple of the Gugrass lineage, Chen Mo was not like the disciples of other branches. For the sake of a few concentrations of various spiritual energy, he would stay and die in this spiritual vein that was only a few dozen miles away. In the past 3 or 4 years, Chen Mo had come to this spiritual vein only a few times. On the way to the depths of the spiritual vein, he did not even see a familiar face. The direction of movement of the flow of people was surprisingly consistent, and the destination was the station of the Gugrass lineage. With a low-key and secluded tradition passed down by the Gugrass lineage for many years, there would not be so many people going there on weekdays, even on important activities of the sect. Chen Mo did not need to guess. He knew that the death of Guzai had spread to all the big and small magic heads and key training demon cubs who lived in the spiritual vein. They all wanted to come to this branch to get a piece of the pie. Even if he didn't get any benefit, he could just watch the excitement. When he advances to the magical power stage in the future and needs to compete for the position of the Vein Master, it might become a valuable experience. Along the way, no one asked Chen Mo's identity or questioned his qualifications to set foot in this secret place of the sect because of his strange face running around in the spiritual veins, which made Chen Mo lose an opportunity to release the aura of a cultivator in the magical power stage and slap his face. The crowd was noisy and crowded. The dark crowd gathered in front of the giant tree where Guxi's cave was located. On the thick trunk, an old tree man's face was revealed. It was the wood creature that Guxi transformed when he was alive, used to guard the house. Because of the accidental death of his master Guxi, the tree man face lost all hope of tree life. He looked up at the gloomy sky blankly, as if mourning Guxi's departure. However, the tree hole leading to the Gugrass lineage's small treasury was firmly blocked by it. Even if there were more divine power cultivators and key training cultivators in front of him, they could not scare away the tree man who had lost his master. Are all the people here? 6 hours have passed since Guzai died, his life plate was shattered, and the sex death bell rang. According to the rules, the time to participate in the competition has come. It's time to see who can become the 19th generation leader of the Gugrass lineage. My fellow practitioners, do you have any doubts? Please speak up as soon as possible. If not, the drama of the battle for the leader should begin. In front of Guzai's cave, an ordinary square-faced middle-aged man looked at the hourglass he had been holding in his hand, confirmed the time for the last time, and asked the people around him first. Chen Mo glanced at this person roughly, and the chip obtained the data of this square-faced middle-aged man. The latest novel is first published in the 69th book forum. Ling Qinshan, who advanced to the initial stage of supernatural power at the age of half a century 3 years ago, caused quite a stir among the inner disciples of the Blood Robe sect, because he had never become a direct disciple of a branch, and he has come to this point by himself, which is very inspiring. Qinshan, initial stage of supernatural power, essence. 8.3, key essence. 13.1, Shen essence. 14.1, his innate supernatural power is unknown, but this person's key is not deep, so he is not dangerous. On weekdays, in addition to collecting various cultivation secrets and common sense of the Sci-Fi continent, the chip also records some major and minor affairs of the Blood Robe sect and even the entire West Coast cultivation world. There have been records about this Qinshan. Speaking of which, the news of his success in advancing to the supernatural power period 3 years ago made this inner disciple, who had always been unknown, the goal of many low-level disciples. Isn't this kind of motivational disciple who has no amazing cultivation talent, no deep background, no resource supply, and relies on personal struggle to gather spiritual materials to impact the supernatural power stage, the best chicken blood? However, in Chen Mo's eyes, this person's cultivation is just so-so. Although the gap between Qinshan and himself in three-dimensional data is not obvious, the development prospects of the two are very different. According to the calculation of the chip, Qinshan's life is only a life of the middle stage of supernatural power, and Chen Mo, who has the hope of impacting the condensed pill stage, is a big level lower than that. And to a certain extent, potential can be directly linked to combat power. After advancing to the supernatural power stage, the chip's detection ability has been greatly improved. The supernatural power stage cultivators, who are always shrouded in an unknown position and shielded from its detection, have been able to dig up personal data in a way that is not noticed by the gods. Qinshan, as long as there is 60% of personal information, has been stolen by the chip in various ways and completed targeted integration. Even though these data do not represent Qinshan's absolute combat power, with these foundations as deduction materials, the chip has allowed Chen Mo to gain the upper hand in winning the fight. He is much stronger than Qinshan, an ignorant man who doesn't even know where his biggest competitor is. Chapter 240 How to Fight? Why, Qinshan, are you so impatient to take the position? You are just a disciple of the inner sect, and you want to be the leader of the vein. Are you qualified? I am just a disciple of the inner sect. How can I be so worthy? Since ancient times, the first bird to come out of the water will be shot. Qinshan asked the question first, which immediately caused a lot of waves among the competitors for the leader of the Guko vein. Many people looked uneasy and exposed the shortcomings of this speaker in a gloomy tone. Since no one present had enough cultivation and prestige to lead the topic and set a rule for competing for the leader of the vein, the demons who were unwilling to submit to each other talked and whispered for a long time, but there was no progress. This unorganized and undisciplined performance disappointed the Killian disciples, who wanted to watch a battle between the cultivators of the supernatural power period. Qinshan originally wanted to propose a fair and just competition in which two people would fight against each other until the strongest one emerged, but he was interrupted by the chattering of the demons. Knowing that he could not convince them, he had to kill the idea and cursed in his heart, "Oh, a group of scattered sands, with a lot of small calculations." No one wants to accept the proposals of others, for fear of losing the initiative in the competition. Without a unified opinion, how can the leader of the branch lineage be decided? Chen Mo restrained the unique aura of the divine power period and mingled with the key training period disciples. He also took in the performance of these potential competitors one by one, and muttered, "What's going on? The selection of the successor to the leader of such an important branch lineage has reached a deadlock?" The Supreme Elder is high above and does not take charge of the matter, and where is the sect master? He doesn't come to preside over it either. That's it. When can we discuss the selection process? Through the secret scanning and data collection of the chip, Chen Mo had a general understanding of the more than 10 divine power period cultivators who came here, and knew why they expressed their opinions and disagreed with others' competition schedule proposals. It's nothing more than a personal focus on cultivation techniques. You are good at tracking, he is good at head-on fighting, and I am good at sneak attacks. Everyone is afraid that the final competition item will be their own weakness, allowing others to take the lead, so I oppose everything proposed by others. Alice, how long will it take to discuss this? As Chen Mo sighed, the Gu grass lineage's residence suddenly changed. The huge human face on the tree trunk finally showed an impatient look amid the chattering of the demon cultivators, split its lips, shook off huge pieces of sawdust, and spit out a mottled parchment. A unique breath belonging to Gu's eye emerged from the paper, and finally formed a vague ghost fire, which was Gu's eye's phantom. As a murderer, Chen Mo saw Gu's eye's lifelike image, and he couldn't help feeling empty in his heart, thinking that he had resurrected with some unconventional secret technique that he had never heard of, and would reveal the truth of his betrayal to his master and ancestors in front of everyone. Ling. Host, please rest assured. Gu's eye has been annihilated, and he couldn't be deader. The soul left in the life card is closely related to the soul of the practitioner. They live and die together, without exception. Please keep your facial expression natural to prevent people from noticing the host's strange behavior. The chip's reconfirmation made Chen Mo put down his hanging heart. After taking a closer look at the phantom of Gu's eye, he finally found that although the ghost fire was realistic like the original, the color of the flame was dim, giving people a feeling of lack of confidence. After staring for a while, Chen Mo confirmed that it was a fake. Gu's eye was really dead. Ling. Host, please be at ease. Even if Gu's eye is still alive, he is only a cultivator in the divine power stage. His status in the sect is not much higher than that of the host. Even if the Supreme Master and the Sect Master do not favor the host, they will never let the Deacon of the Discipline Hall hunt down the host. Even if Chen Mo really had a bad record of betraying his teacher and destroying his ancestors, Gu's eye was still alive and exposed him. The Blood Robe sect would not make things difficult for Chen Mo on the surface and would definitely remain neutral. After all, after entering the divine power stage, Chen Mo was also the backbone of the sect. If Gu's eye wanted revenge, he could only do it himself. This kind of fairness and justice limited to the divine power stage has led to many cultivators in the Blood Robe sect who have deep hatred for each other. They cannot make things difficult for each other through the hands of the sect. They can only rely on their own strength. Every year, they spar a few times and fight a few verbal battles. It is one of the few opportunities for key training stage disciples to see cultivators take action. With his expression restored to calm, Chen Mo took back the key yuan that he had just raised in his body to the key C, stopping the trend of slipping away and escaping from the sect. I want to see what last words you have to say. Chen Mo looked at Gu's eye's phantom coldly, waiting for the next words. His real thoughts were, the old guy died and still didn't stop, and he made a last word to disgust me? Oh, no, you just wrote a will in advance to prevent accidents. I want to see if you have predicted the specific date and details of your own death, and want to expose the disciple who betrayed the master and destroyed the ancestors in your last words. Ling. Predicting the future does not exist. Practitioners never believe in fate, but only believe that fate is in their own hands. At most, they believe in intuition, but intuition is nothing more than the product of the combined effects of various factors such as physical instinct, external consciousness, and perception of external dangers. In the final analysis, the intuition of practitioners is still a perceptual conclusion drawn from rational factors, and has nothing to do with the so-called foresight and prediction of personal destiny. The chip once again dispelled Chen Mo's speculation, so that he no longer entangled in the negative impact of Gu's eye's last words on himself. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. The Ghost Fire Phantom, in the expectation of the demon cubs and demons, finally uttered a paragraph of text. Its tone is also very consistent with Gu's eye's usual style, full of the flavor of doing whatever he wants. I, Gu's eye, leave a message here on a certain day of a certain year to formulate the selection process for the 19th Vein Master of my Gu grass lineage. The heroic spirits of the sect are above, and the heaven and earth are witnesses. No one can disobey. Here it comes, the drama of the Vein Master candidate has kicked off. The ghost fire banged and exploded into sparks all over the sky. In the air, it combined into a series of words, writing Guzai's final arrangement: "There is a vassal king in Kangzhou. His name is Yan Qingyi, and whoever takes his head can be the 19th vein master of my grass lineage." Chen Mo's pupils shrank, and he finally recalled the promise he made during the key training period. Wasn't it to take the head of a certain Ning surnamed woman's enemy? Wasn't her enemy the three-character title prince whose vassal state was located on the border of Kangzhou, the Kangping Yan Wang, Yan Qingyi? What a coincidence! Guzai's arrangement before his death just happened to help me settle a matter. Chen Mo couldn't help but feel happy, and felt that the world was extremely coincidental. He didn't know what Guzai was thinking when he left this last words. But, a mere border vassal king with a three-character title is also worthy of more than a dozen early-stage supernatural power cultivators. When did the mere Kangzhou County city become such a dragon's den and tiger's lair? Could it be a competition to see who can take heads faster? However, while Chen Mo was thinking, a group of competitors had already shown their supernatural powers and flew to Kangzhou. Before Guzai's cave, Chen Mo actually became the only supernatural power cultivator. Chapter 241 Talk to me about respecting teachers? The magic cultivators in the supernatural power stage all rushed to Kaiyan Kangzhou at the speed of reincarnation, which disappointed the key training stage disciples who gathered to watch the excitement. They shook their heads, sighed, and left the Gukeo lineage. Soon, the crowd dispersed, and the remaining people were Chen Mo, Lu Zhen'er, and several other Guxi disciples. After the death of the master, how to get along with the next lineage master and his disciples is a big question. Except for Chen Mo, the faces of the others were a little ugly, and they were very confused about how to stay in the Gukeo lineage in the future. Zhu Xianren, the senior brother in the 11th level of the key training stage, who thought he had the strongest cultivation, watched the last words of Guxi in the air gradually fade away. He was the first to recognize the cruel reality, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes, and he made up his mind. A faint spiritual pressure of a high-level Kigan practitioner rose from him. His eyes were like swords. He turned around and looked around at his fellow disciples. He said in a cold voice, as if admonishing or scolding, "When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Our master has passed away. We have no one to rely on. If we still want to continue to enjoy the benefits of being disciples of the Gukeo lineage, we must unite and not give others an excuse to expel us from the Gukeo lineage. We must obey the new lineage master and deal with the new direct disciples." Zhu Xianren deliberately glanced at Chen Mo, and instructed meaningfully, "Junior brother Chen is proficient in the way of breeding goo insects. Every time you harvest, you must give more to honor the new lineage master. You must also consciously take less of the annual sect fee, so as not to ruin our image in the hearts of the new lineage master and fellow disciples." Zhu Xianren, who regarded himself as the eldest senior brother, swept his sharp eyes to the remaining junior brothers and sisters, and asked each of them, "What do you think?" His wolfish ambition was obvious. "Mr. Zhu, you just can't stand the share of the regular money that senior brother Chen got after joining our vein, and you want to use his share to please the next vein master. Why do you beat around the bush? You also want to call on us to follow your lead, but you don't even look at your virtue. You are not worthy." Chen Mo was still thinking about the deep meaning of Guzai's last words, and didn't take Zhu Xianren, the senior brother who never said a few words, to heart at all. But Lu Zhen'er on the side couldn't stand it, and her words were like swords, and she ridiculed Zhu Xianren like a machine gun. Although she didn't know that Chen Mo had already advanced to the supernatural power stage, the experience of sharing hardships on the subcontinent made Lu Zhen'er guess some of Chen Mo's strength. She firmly believed that even if it was only the tip of the iceberg of senior brother Chen's strength, he could trample on the big brother who looked like a dog. Why, you're not convinced? This is the truth. A useless senior brother who has wasted 20 years and still dares not to challenge the supernatural power stage is just relying on eating a few more years of free food. What's so proud about it? Zhu Xianren's face has been stimulated to the color of liver. The raging anger and spiritual pressure enveloped Lu Zhen'er, but the latter continued to provoke him relentlessly. He could only lean towards Chen Mo, who was thinking and silent. Lu Zhen'er knew that she was not Zhu Xianren's opponent, but as long as Chen Mo could beat him, it would be fine. With this in mind, Lu Zhen'er's delicate body leaned closer to Chen Mo, and her slender hands even reached out to the hem of Chen Mo's clothes, hiding her whole body behind him. After just a few steps, Lu Xian'er suddenly found that Zhu Xianren's spiritual pressure, which almost suffocated her, disappeared quietly. Looking up, it turned out to be Chen Mo's tall body, like a mountain, shielding her from all the ups and downs. It looked very reassuring. "Hey, senior brother Chen, I haven't seen you for 3 days. You have improved your cultivation again. You must teach this useless senior brother Zhu a lesson for your junior sister." In order to demonstrate, Lu Xian'er deliberately stuck her head out and raised her right fist to Zhu Xianren. The blatant insult of a female disciple and the blatant disregard of a youngest male disciple made Zhu Xianren tear off his last disguise. He laughed in anger and said, well, you are a perfect match. You have become more capable. Today, as a senior brother, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of the deceased master about respecting teachers. Before making a move to establish his authority, Zhu Xianren looked fiercely at the remaining disciples of Guxi, signaling them with his eyes not to meddle in other people's business. With his Qi Yuan surging, he would use powerful magic to declare his status and strength as the current senior brother of the 18th generation of the Gukeo lineage. Tisk. Talking to the host about respecting teachers? Ridiculous. Talking about betraying teachers and destroying ancestors is almost the same. The provocation of this ant is really annoying. Please solve it quickly. Chip couldn't stand it anymore and called Chen Mo back from his contemplative state. His slightly blurred eyes casually scanned the circle, taking in everyone's expressions, and guessed the little thoughts of these fellow brothers and sisters. Zhu Xianren just wanted to continue to maintain his position as the eldest brother of the 18th generation Gukeo lineage, so that he would have a place even if a new lineage master took office. Using Chen Mo to establish his authority, in addition to declaring that he was still the eldest brother after the change of lineage master, another purpose was to see that Chen Mo had gained the most benefits from Guxi in recent years, and to take the opportunity to target him harshly. Except for Lu Xian'er, whose heart was tied to Chen Mo, the other silent brothers and sisters were not necessarily good people. They probably hoped that the two would fight each other to a draw, or even die directly, so that there would be 2 less quotas for the spiritual materials and benefits of the Gukeo lineage. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. After the new Vein Master and his disciples join the Gukeo lineage, the old disciples of the 18th generation will definitely have their shares reduced by the new Vein Master, and they will not be trusted by him/her. They can only ensure that their shares remain unchanged by squeezing the shares of their own brothers and sisters. He is already in the supernatural power period. Chen Mo is too lazy to sort out the twists and turns in the intrigues and calculations. Instead, he showed a mocking smile and said, "How can a sparrow know the ambition of a swan?" which made the people present feel powerful. Chen Mo flicked his sleeves lightly, and pulled a corner of his clothes out of Lu Xian'er's sweaty palm due to nervousness and excitement, to prevent her from continuing to shamelessly take advantage of him. Then, he raised his right hand to his chest, facing Zhu Xianren in front of him, and clenched it. The breeze was blowing, and the water was calm. There was no gorgeous and dazzling magic effect. Zhu Xianren, who had carefully prepared powerful magic to teach the 2 brothers and sisters a lesson, suddenly felt as if his neck was pinched by an invisible big hand, and he was silent. The rising momentum of Qi Yuan was suddenly suppressed. Under the backlash of the magic, Zhu Xianren directly rushed from the Qi Sea to the throat, but under the suppression of the same invisible hand, he couldn't even spit blood and breathe. There were only a few people present. Zhu Xianren looked at Chen Mo's clenched right hand. How could he not guess that it was actually his hand and foot? His eyes were full of horror. Limited imagination could not help him guess how Chen Mo did this weird step. Chapter 242, Only Master Knows Me. The invisible hand was getting stronger and stronger. Zhu Xianren's face turned red, and his eyes began to blur due to lack of oxygen. He only felt that Chen Mo's figure instantly turned into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 people, and he was about to suffocate and forget. In the sect, unless you step onto the life and death arena, it is still not appropriate to kill people in court, especially the direct disciples of the branch lineage. If it causes a bad influence on the sect, please stop in time. If Zhu Xianren was just an outer disciple of low status, it would not be a big trouble to kill Chen Mo, who is in the advanced magical power period. However, as a direct disciple of the Gukeo lineage, Zhu Xianren still has some personal protection from the rules of the blood-clothed sect. Before he becomes the 19th Gukeo lineage master, it is better not to crush Chen Mo to death casually. Thinking of this, Chen Mo loosened his right fist. Zhu Xianren, whose feet were gradually lifted 3 inches off the ground by the invisible hand, felt his neck suddenly loosen, and fell to the ground with a bang. Limping helplessly in the mud, Zhou Xianren's eyes were filled with the terrifying figure of Chen Mo. No matter how much resentment and unwillingness he felt in his heart, he dared not provoke again, and lowered his head in silence. Hiss! The other brothers, sisters, and junior sisters saw Chen Mo easily defeat Zhou Xianren, who was the strongest in cultivation, and they all took a breath of cold air. In shock and fear, they dared not answer, let alone look at him. Zhou Xianren, a key training ant who didn't even have the courage to break through the supernatural power stage, couldn't be crushed to death easily, so Chen Mo looked away after teaching him a lesson, leaving him aside and letting him go. Looking up, Chen Mo looked at the tired face of the tree spirit after spitting out Gu Zai's last words, and showed a playful smile. I say, tree spirit, there must be a sequel to this text left by Gu Zai, but you hid it, right? After some contemplation, Chen Mo had already tasted something wrong. If Gu Zai wanted to select the successor of the Gu Grass Vein Master, there was no need to set the head of a mere vassal king as a competition item. Because according to Chen Mo's estimation, if the manpower was properly deployed and the plan was thorough, a small team of high-level Kigen practitioners, at a certain price, might even be able to take down Yan Qingyi's head. Therefore, after careful consideration, Chen Mo spoke to test the artificial tree spirit, using the art of rhetorical questions, without any hesitation of guessing out of thin air. Sure enough, the simple-minded tree spirit revealed its true colors. Its huge tree face opened slightly, but it could not utter a single word of denial. Pieces of mottled bark leaked out of the opening, and it looked as if its lies had been exposed in front of its face. I suggest that the host interrogate this tree spirit directly. It is a creation of magic. It does not even count as the inheritance of Guxi or the property of the Gu Grass lineage. It is not protected by the sect. The host can do whatever he wants. Afterwards, you can go directly into the Guxi cave and accept the generous inheritance of this master. Chen Mo got the chip's approval and smiled. You don't have to confess. I will take what belongs to me myself. The so-called leniency for confession and strictness for resistance are not as direct as soul-searching and soul-refining. Chen Mo's figure stood in the air. In the blink of an eye, he moved horizontally in front of the tree spirit's face. His slender 5 fingers, like golden chains, were pressed together and pierced into the bark. The black mist transformed by the dream snake, like spider silk, tentacles and other captured objects, pulled out a faint silver-white mist from the body of the tree spirit. Among them, the black and white pictures were constantly changing like a horse-drawn lantern. With a complete inheritance of the alchemists in the supernatural power stage, Chen Mo is already a veteran in playing with the soul. The black mists released are actually the body of the dream snake after it is split. Chen Mo attached the materialized consciousness to the dream snake, and with the help of its dream-eating talent, he can directly read the relevant memories from the tree spirit soul. Moreover, he can use his mind to do 2 things at the same time, alerting the surrounding situation, which is much faster and safer than the soul-reading technique he mastered before. Frames of black and white pictures flashed before Chen Mo's eyes, recording the people, beasts, and insects coming and going in Guxi Cave. With the sound of the chip beeping, Chen Mo captured the second half of Guxi's last words in the fragmented tree spirit memory stream. Sure enough, the damn tree spirit, according to Gu Zai's instructions, hid the most important second half of the last words. 1 master and 1 servant, very cunning, all damned. Observing the last words and instructions in the tree spirit's memory, it is nothing more than Gu Zai's responsibility as the head of the Gu Grass lineage. He is worried that he will die at any time, or fail to break through the condensed pill stage, and wants to choose a satisfactory successor through a reasonable selection method. The second half of the last words revealed the characteristics of the 19th head of the Gu Grass lineage that Gu Zai was most looking forward to. The successor of this seat must be meticulous, but act recklessly and ignore the rules. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. Specifically, he ignored the first half of the will, did not take the head of King Yan of camping, and directly broke into the cave of this seat, inherited the rich legacy of the Gu Grass lineage, and obtained the seal of the master of the lineage. Doesn't the key information read from the tree spirit's mind vividly fit Chen Mo's style and personality? Chen Mo, just as described in the second half of the will, did not abide by the rules and did not go to Kangzhou, but after careful consideration, he directly had the crooked idea of forcibly breaking into the cave of Guxi. From this point of view, Chen Mo, who killed Guxi himself, is indeed the most ideal successor in his heart. But he did not expect that the growth rate of this direct disciple was so fast. In just 3 or 4 years, he achieved the achievement of deceiving his teacher and destroying his ancestors. Chen Mo read this message and couldn't help but be happy. He murmured to himself, sure enough, like master, like disciple. The master and the disciple are the same kind of people. This is not a waste of our relationship. At the end of the black and white memory stream, Chen Mo read Guzai's last requirement for his successor. In addition, the 19th Gugrass Vein Master must have a strong fist and beat those competitors who foolishly went to take Yan Qixin's head. When Qin Shat and his group returned to the sect with Yan Qixin's head, they would find that Chen Mo had taken the lead and would definitely not accept it. At that time, Chen Mo would have to show the strength of the 19th Gugrass Vein Master. It can be seen that Guzai's selection of successors has extremely strict requirements on character, strength, and thinking ability, and none of them can be missing. Chen Mo's ability to stand out shows that he has learned the true teachings of Guzai and has a deep understanding of self-cultivation of demon cubs. He can be called a good seedling of the demon. Master is the only one in the world who understands me. Chen Mo sighed, but in his heart, he did not feel the slightest bit of guilt for killing Guzai with his own hands. If he did not kill his master who knew him so well earlier, wouldn't it be troublesome if he plotted against him one day? Chapter 243 The 19th. After the dream meeting was over, the dream snake snored happily, which shook Chen Mo's possessed consciousness out of the soul-reading state. In front of him, after the tree spirit told Guzai's last words, the bark of the human face broke into pieces, as if it had been sifted by a fine iron comb, and countless sawdust fell. After a while, the anthropomorphic face became blurred. A gatekeeper tree spirit, with a divine essence of only 9.3, how could it withstand Chen Mo's dream snake soul searching? But at the end of its soul, the tree spirit looked at Chen Mo, who perfectly matched Guzai's heart, with a gratified smile, and said leisurely, Master, did you see it? The most suitable 19th Gugrass Vein Master has been found by me. Looking at the tree spirit smiling in the underworld, Chen Mo's expression was weird. If it knew that its master was killed by itself, the 19th Gugrass Vein Master, would it turn back from the underworld? According to Guzai's personality model, the probability that the two last words are true is 93%. In Guzai's opinion, only the host who is better than the master is the most suitable successor. The probability of there being a conspiracy in Guzai's cave is less than 2%. Please feel free to enter the cave and inherit the rich legacy of the Gugrass lineage. The scientific analysis of the chip dispelled Chen Mo's last doubts. Guzai left a last word about selecting a successor in advance, just to select a more suitable successor, not to kill the vulture who coveted the legacy of the Gugrass lineage. It's safe in the cave. The death of the tree spirit caused Guzai's cave to lose its last layer of protection. A large hole that was 3 people high and 2 people could hug was broken on the thick tree trunk. The thick yin spirit energy rushed out of the dark and bottomless tree hole with a scream. This pleasant dark atmosphere made Chen Mo groan comfortably. From now on, this place belongs to me. A group of Guxi disciples stared blankly at Chen Mo's swaggering into the cave of the deceased master. Even if they were slow, they recognized Chen Mo's cultivation from the spiritual pressure he exuded and the tough means he used to kill the cave's guardian tree spirit. Divine power stage? Impossible. He has only been practicing for a few years? Even if he has been practicing since his mother's womb, it is impossible for him to improve so quickly. Zhu Xianren, who was hit hard, stared at the deep tree hole with lifeless eyes, shook his head in disbelief, and kept repeating the word impossible in an attempt to convince himself not to accept this cruel fact. Thinking about how many years he had wasted in the key training stage, converted into 12 years per cycle, he had 3 or 4 cycles longer than this junior brother who entered the last. How could Zhu Xianren feel? Lu Zhen'er glanced at Zhu Xianren, who was trapped in a self-deceiving situation, with sympathy, and had already foreseen his miserable future. The little junior brother who was originally offended became the 19th head of the Gukeo lineage. As a disciple of the same lineage, how should Zhu Xianren survive in the future? It seems that the only way to die is to be hunted down and killed for betraying the sect. As for the other fellow disciples, although they felt sympathetic about Zhu Xianren's miserable situation, when Lu Zhen'er's eyes swept over them, they all put on sweet smiles. No matter how they felt about this little junior sister who was registered, they had to greet her with a smile and serve her carefully. Lu Zhen'er was able to grab a corner of Chen Mo's clothes. Just from this point, It can be seen that the relationship between the two is not simple. In the future, they still have to make a living in the Gukeo lineage. How can they, as senior brothers and sisters, not vigorously manage their relationship with Lu Zhen'er? On the other side, Chen Mo walked in a tree hole deep underground. He could hear his own almost inaudible footsteps and breathed in the extremely rich yin spirit. He sighed as if he was in another world. Chen Mo still remembered the scene when he first met Guzai. He had hoped to win the favor of this late-stage demon by breeding goo worms, and have a seat in the blood-clothed sect, and not be bullied by others. Unexpectedly, the situation changed. Before he knew it, Guzai, who he had regarded as a great backer, was accidentally sent to the dream world and killed by himself. Now, it is Chen Mo's turn to turn over and become his own backer. The wonders of the world are all in it. Becoming the head of the Gugrass lineage, the world in the future will be completely different. In the main lounge of Guzai, Chen Mo played with a jade seal that symbolized the power of the head of the branch lineage, sitting on the seat that used to be Guzai's, and felt that the future was promising. After squeezing out a drop of blood from his fingers and completing the jade seal's recognition of its master, the seal, without being urged by Chen Mo, automatically condensed a ball of yin spirit energy and floated in front of him. In the crystal-clear jade, a handsome face that everyone in the blood-clothed sect knew was reflected, the leader of the blood-clothed sect, Zhu Qianchao. Unlike his rampant surname, Zhu Qianchao's appearance was very elegant. What was revealed was a graceful middle-aged scholar, with 2 strands of carefully maintained black hair hanging down his temples, adding a third of unrestrained and unruly to him. If he were mixed in the secular imperial capital, Zhu Qianchao would be the most unforgettable literary leader of countless resentful women in the boudoir, who would look forward to inviting him to the mansion to sing a song every day. The latest novel is first published on the 6th-9th book bar. According to gossips in the sect, his cultivation is even more unfathomable than Guxi's. It is unknown whether he has touched or even stepped into the door of the condensation pill stage. Just looking at the appearance of the phantom, Chen Mo can't see the depth of Zhu Qianchao. Maybe, under his elegant appearance of a middle-aged handsome scholar, he hides a rotten and dark heart that has lasted for 500 years. He is indifferent to everything except cultivation. Seeing Chen Mo's young face, Zhu Qianchao was not surprised at all. As if he was going through the process of the sect, he simply said, "Congratulations, junior brother, for succeeding the position of the 19th generation Gugrass Vein Master. I hope you can carry forward this 1,000-year inheritance." Zhu Qianchao seemed to have seen many young talents who advanced to the divine power stage at a young age. He did not ask Chen Mo about his cultivation, background, and master. As for the legitimacy of his inheritance of Guxi's legacy, he did not question him at all. In Chen Mo's view, it seemed that whoever had the jade seal, Zhu Qianchao would recognize him as the new vein master of the Gugrass lineage. It was extremely simple. After asking Chen Mo if he was willing to leave his soul tablet in the sect and being rejected by Chen Mo, Zhu Qianchao took the initiative to cut off contact and left a sentence, "Junior brother Chen, all the precautions of the Pulse Master are in the jade seal. Please read it carefully. Senior brother still has important matters to deal with. I will say congratulations and say goodbye to you." The jade seal returned to its original crystal-clear state without a trace of impurities and fell back into Chen Mo's hands. After a careful study, Chen Mo confirmed that this Pulse Master seal finally belonged to him completely, and there would never be another terrifying incident of Zhu Qianchao suddenly appearing. Happy National Day! Come and subscribe and give monthly tickets to celebrate. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244 Dismissal. The image of Zhu Qianchao gradually dissipated, leaving behind a clean Pulse Master seal. After Chen Mo repeatedly confirmed that the chip was correct, he put it in the storage bag and added a sealing technique to prevent the hidden door that the chip had not discovered from secretly spying on his secret behavior. But I think that the sect master Zhu Qianchao would not do such a stupid thing. Who doesn't have a few shameful little secrets for the Pulse Masters and Deacons who can reach the supernatural power stage? If the sect master can spy on their privacy at any time through the Jade Seal, the Zhu Yi sect would have been shattered long ago. As for not agreeing to leave the natal soul card before, Chen Mo was also concerned about the existence of the Supreme Elder of the condensation pill stage. If he has any secret technique that can track the person who left the natal soul card through this trace of soul, or even curse and kill the person who left the natal soul card from a distance of thousands of miles, wouldn't Chen Mo take the initiative to hand over the life gate to others? In this way, how can Chen Mo betray his teacher and destroy his ancestors in the future? In addition, Chen Mo was full of surprise that he could inherit the throne of the Gukao Pulse Master so easily. Originally, when he saw the image of Zhu Qianshao, he secretly ordered Chip to write all kinds of articles to fool people in case he asked tricky questions about whether he knew how Guzai died. So simple? So careless? I became the master of the vein. Chen Mo really didn't expect that all his preparations were in vain. Zhu Qianshao didn't care who would inherit the throne of Guzai, and he didn't know how this broad-brush decentralization behavior could lead the Zhu Ai sect, a huge earth magic organization. After thinking about it, Chen Mo came up with the only explanation that the Supreme Elder was still alive. Just as Chen Mo could easily suppress the key training disciples of the Gugrass lineage after becoming a supernatural power, by analogy, it is believed that the Supreme Elder of the condensation pill stage can also subdue a group of supernatural power demons with one hand. But it's better this way, so I don't have to tell a lot of lies and worry. Chen Mo curled his lips, threw the task of understanding the matters of the Master of the Vein to Chip, and calmly went to the small treasury to search for the collection of the Gugrass lineage. There is also Guzai's inner storehouse in there. Maybe there are a lot of good things. As a master, the more precious the spiritual materials are, the more Guzai will enjoy them alone. Chen Mo missed the treasure in the storage bag he carried with him. Maybe he could get some unexpected gains in the small treasury below. Chen Mo, transformed into a greedy dragon that fell into the treasure cave, ignored the disturbances in the sect, and jumped into the ocean of spiritual materials and spiritual stones in the Guciao small treasury. Ocean, it's really an ocean. Spiritual stones of different colors and full of rich spiritual energy are scattered in every corner of the treasure house, covering the blue stone floor with a layer of gorgeous lumpy carpet. Chen Mo roamed in it, and most of his body was covered by various spiritual stones. If it were an ordinary person's body, it would be a luxury to move in it. Picking up a spiritual stone at random, Chen Mo crushed it with one hand, letting the spiritual energy splash on his face, and felt that he could lie down and eat interest for half of his life. That's right, institutions such as silver shops and pawn shops that deposit and lend, collect and pay interest exist even in the cultivation world. After all, practitioners are not really immortals who do not eat the fireworks of the world, and they also need circulating currencies such as lingxi to buy and sell things. With the prosperity of the market, it is natural to give birth to lingxi's huang and lingxi pawn shop. After all, there are always some people who are as wealthy as Chen Mo now, and lingxi piles up like mountains and seas. Even if you use the largest storage bag, you have to stuff 100. For the convenience of fighting and escaping, even if you have more lingxi, you will never go out with a full storage bag on your body, right? Therefore, if Chen Mo, who became rich overnight, wants to deposit, withdraw and use large amounts of lingxi, he must have a large lingxi number in the old lingxi's huang on the west coast. It's a pity that Guxi's exclusive lingxi number has fallen into the dream world and no one in the world knows about it. Chen Mo has no way to inherit his deposit lingxi in lingxi's huang. Chen Mo scanned the huge vault with his spiritual sense, but he didn't find a single medium or high-level spiritual stone. After a little thought, he knew that these truly valuable spiritual stones had been stored in lingxi manor by Guzai. Unfortunately, Chen Mo couldn't get these inheritances back unless Guzai left instructions in lingxi manor. Chen Mo is the heir of the remaining spiritual stones after his death. Those who can open lingxi manor must be protected by powerful military forces, and even have the shadow of old monsters in the condensation pill stage behind them. Even if close relatives come to ask for the inheritance of their fathers, brothers, grandfathers, and mothers, they cannot use force and there is no will left in advance as proof. Lingxi manor will not give them a penny. Chen Mo can only give up the inheritance income after Guzai's death. It would be great if they were all medium and high-level spiritual stones. Chen Mo sighed in disappointment as he was in a pile of low-level spiritual stones. Although the low-level spirit stones that filled up half of the treasury were huge in number and looked impressive at first glance, they were only useful for Kigan practitioners. Many precious spiritual materials could not be purchased with low-level spirit stones, not even mid-level spirit stones. Only high-level spirit stones, which were themselves precious spiritual materials, were the trading currency for precious spiritual materials that were beneficial to all the cultivators in the divine power stage. A lonely person like Chen Mo, who had no subordinates to train, did not need to have so many low-level spirit stones. If all the huge amount of low-level spirit stones were exchanged for high-level spirit stones, there would be a huge transaction loss. No one would do this unless it was necessary. So over the years, generations of Gugrass Vein Masters had accumulated so many useless low-level spirit stones. It's really true that the rich are living in luxury, but the poor are dying on the streets. Chen Mo couldn't help but sigh when he thought of so many low-level spiritual stones gathering dust in the treasury of the Gukeo lineage, and the countless inner and outer disciples of the Blood Robe sect fighting for just a few dozen or even a few low-level spiritual stones every day. But then he thought, what does the life and death of these ants have to do with him? Even if these piles of spiritual stones were left to rot on the warehouse, Chen Mo would not take them out to help the inner and outer disciples who were suffering. Of course, the accumulation of so many low-level spiritual stones is also due to the fact that the number of people in the Gukeo lineage has been small for many years, and the number of distribution and use is also small, so many stocks have been accumulated year by year. Afterwards, after wandering around in the treasury for a long time, Chen Mo only found a dozen spiritual materials that might be useful to him. He was a little disappointed, but he also knew that it was good to have the harvest now. After all, the real good things of the Gukeo lineage were all collected by Guxi personally, and fell into the dream world with him. In the future, as the leader of the Gugrass vein, I will accumulate wealth and strive to stop worrying about cultivation resources as soon as possible. Chen Mo looked forward to it, and then found that in addition to continuing his great cause of breeding insects and beasts, he had another way to make money: take the Ronku cordyceps that the sect would distribute from time to time. If Chen Mo didn't want it, he could exchange it for sect contribution points or other precious spiritual materials of equal value, which could meet many of his own cultivation needs. Not to mention the potential benefits of not giving sect benefits to branch disciples. I think this is also the reason why the Gugrass vein has always maintained a sparse population. The latest novel is first published on the 69th book bar. If the number of disciples is too large and the vein leader's share is reduced, what's the point of impacting the condensation pale stage? Of course, if Chen Mo's eating manners were too ugly, his reputation in the demon sect would definitely be ruined, and the Gugrass lineage would no longer be able to find satisfactory disciples, and the Taoist tradition that had been passed down for nearly 1,000 years would be cut off at the 19th generation. But, what does it have to do with me if the Taoist tradition of the Gugrass lineage is cut off? Chen Mo said with a disdainful smile, the resources of the Gugrass lineage are all mine. In life, I should put myself first. What does it have to do with me whether the Taoist tradition is not a Taoist tradition or a sect is not a sect? Thinking of this, Chen Mo wrote out the first decree of the 19th Gugrass lineage master with one hand, which was also the thickest decree, and let it fly to the former brothers, sisters and junior sisters who had not yet dispersed outside the cave. I, the 19th generation Guxiao sect master Chen Mo, have decided that all disciples of the branch sect will be dismissed from today onwards. They will seek their own way out in the sect and receive varying amounts of low-level spirit stones as the final severance pay. In order to prevent Luz Henner from having any reason to continue to stay in the Guxiao sect, Chen Mo listed a list. Her name was clearly visible, which made Luz Henner's pretty face pale and saddened by Chen Mo's ruthlessness. Looking at her heartbroken eyes, those who didn't know would think that another ungrateful man had appeared in the Blood Robe sect. And behind Zhu Xianren's name, there was a note of no severance pay, which was the price he paid for offending Chen Mo. If you offend me, I won't give you even a spirit stone. In order to create a reputation in the Blood Robe sect that he was not too demanding of the disciples of the former sect master, Chen Mo gave everyone except Zhu Xianren a severance pay of a certain amount of spirit stones. As for more good things, he didn't give a penny. There are many people in the Blood Robe sect who, like Chen Mo, only practiced alone after becoming a vein master, did not accept any disciples, and took all the sect benefits for themselves. However, Chen Mo's behavior was just maintained at a level that was neither mean nor generous, and he was very moderate. This move shocked the old disciples. They never expected that a new vein master who was promoted by a junior brother would be so cruel to his former senior brothers and sisters. This is the rhythm of eating alone. Zhu Xianren was secretly happy. After all, he didn't have to face Chen Mo, whom he had offended before. Even if he lost the noble status of a branch disciple, he could still get along well in the inner and outer sects. As for the severance pay of spirit stones, he didn't expect it. He was very afraid that if he continued to stay in the Gukeo vein, Chen Mo would one day kill himself in the process of research in the name of helping the Vein Master conduct human experiments. What a pity, the 1,000-year-old Gu grass lineage has turned today. Seeing this dismissal speech, everyone present knew that without fresh blood to replenish the Gu grass lineage, there would be a day when it would disappear. Who is the 19th generation Gu grass lineage leader? Stand up, Yan Qingyi's head is in my hand, why can't the lineage leader throne be mine? Seeing this text, Qin Shi's angry roar was heard from a distance. Chapter 245, A Filial Son? A Filial Son? With a roar of roars, Qin Shi emerged from the white and blue skyline with a black light. Although he was tired from the journey, he was still in high spirits because he was about to get the throne of the leader of the vein. Especially with a handful of thick black hair in his right hand, a bloody head was shaking from side to side, which gave him the confidence to question the legitimacy of the 19th leader of the Gu grass vein who came out of nowhere. Needless to say, Qin Shi, who hurried back to the sect, must have taken the head of Yan Qingyi, the vassal king of Kang's Hao. As for Qin Shi, there were several demon shadows with slightly slower speeds behind him. From a distance, one could feel a strong unwillingness and a faint fear from the ghost and demon energy that kept surging around them. Obviously, in this competition to seize Yan Qingyi's head, Qin Shi and these demons with empty heads had a lot of dirty tricks, and even a struggle to hold each other back. Unfortunately, the efforts of these losers only left a few scratches and tears on Qin Shi's coat, and the most important token, Yan Qingyi's head, was not taken away or even destroyed. Now, a group of competitors for the Vein Master have entered the Blood Robe sect. It is impossible for them to attack Qin Shi in public. Qin Shi has Yan Qingyi's head as evidence, and he is already invincible. Although Chen Mo has not appeared yet, these cunning demons, combined with the decree of the 19th generation Gukeo Vein Master that has not yet dissipated, and Qin Shi's exasperated expression, immediately guessed that the Vein Master's throne has been taken by someone else. Holding the idea of you can't get what I can't get, these demons who had long been separated from the position of the leader of the Gukeo lineage started to make a fuss and fan the flames behind Qin Shi. Master Qin, who is the 19th leader? Oh, Brother Qin, you've worked in vain. So what if you robbed someone? Isn't it because someone robbed you of your position? The strange voices filled the void. The demons who were afraid of chaos in the world also used Qi Yuan to spread these noisy voices to most of the blood-clothed sect's spiritual veins. For a while, all kinds of escape lights flashed in various places of the spiritual veins. The disturbed Qi training disciples gathered at the Gukeo lineage's residence to join in the fun. Among them, there were even several leaders and deacons who wanted to see how this farce would end. The crowd gathered more and more, and Qin Shi floated in front of the cave, his face as gloomy as water. The current situation has become a situation where it is difficult to get off the tiger. If he leaves in disgrace and swallows the anger of having his Vein Master taken away, the Zhuai sect will never be able to raise his head again. A storm has gathered many people, but the figure of Zhuai sect Master Zhu Qianchao has not appeared for a long time. Qin Shi has already had a bad idea in his mind. Although there are few rules and regulations in the demon sect, this kind of bad behavior of stealing the position of Vein Master, Qin Shi thinks so himself, will definitely attract the attention of the Vein Master, and even come out to personally administer justice. However, after such a long time, Zhu Qianchao has not reacted at all, and has not even sent a personal disciple. Even if Qin Shi is slow, he can taste a subtle taste. Sect Master Zhu Qianchao supports the person in the cave to become the 19th Vein Master of the Gukeo lineage. At first glance, he didn't come, and it seemed that he would not help either side, implying that Qin Shi could use force to resolve the dispute, but the deeper meaning was that Zhu Qianchao protected the person in the cave as the Vein Master, because what Qin Shi held in his hand was the head of Yan Qingyi that Guzai requested in his last words. Not wanting to work in vain, Qin Shi threw Yan Qingyi's head directly into the dark tree hole left by the tree spirit after his death, and said coldly, Yan Qingyi's head is here. The one in the cave, please come out obediently and hand over the Vein Master's seal, otherwise, don't blame me, Qin Shi, for using force. Qin Shi is also an old practitioner with rich experience in fighting. While he was speaking harsh words, he kept making small moves in secret, thinking of harming people. His spiritual consciousness quietly spread to a place more than 10 meters around him, paying attention to any slight movement, especially the fluctuation of spiritual energy. Qin Shi's eyes were like a hawk, staring at the cave to open, waiting for the moment when the figure appeared, and then he would take action directly. Qin Shi was unwilling to obey the so-called witness's order to fight again. In his opinion, there was no need to follow any rules for the thief who stole the position of the vain master. Gilulu, Yan Qingyi's head rolled on the flat grass with a dull sound as Qin Shi threw it. It was pitiful to say that the dignified Qiannian vassal king had a carefree life on the border, but not long after that, he was killed by a group of supernatural demons who suddenly broke into the palace. A small place on the border that was not a major battlefield could not stop a group of vicious demons. Yan Qingyi, except for a head used as a token, was still intact, and the rest of his body parts had long been crushed into powder in the fight between these demons for the head. And now, even after death, his body and head could not rest in peace, and were thrown casually on the dirty ground by Qin Shi. But it must be said that Yan Qingyi was still fat and plump, despite the worldly life of luxury. From the only intact head left, one could guess how extravagant his daily life was and how much money he enjoyed from the people. His face was rich and his skin was well maintained, as delicate as silk. There were 2 thick layers of fat on his broken neck, showing a natural nobility. The unfinished blood he shed even gave off a hazy sheen of oil under the sunlight. It was a pity that his eyes, which had not yet closed, were filled with horror, and together with his embarrassment of rolling on the grass, destroyed this royal nobility. Qin Shi threw Yan Qingyi's head away, venting a little of his anger, and then said, "Gu Zai's last words are still there, and the head of the token is still there. I want to see who dares to break the rules." Dong dong dong, rhythmic footsteps sounded from the dark cave, as if the thief who stole the throne of the vain master could no longer hide and had to confront Qin Shi in broad daylight. Originally, Qin Shi, who was good at frontal fighting, had already made up his mind to take action directly when he saw someone walking out of the cave. However, when a white robe appeared in the corner of his eyes, he couldn't help but stop the powerful magic that was ready to be used because of surprise. The figure who slowly walked out of the cave was Chen Mo, but he was not wrapped in a black and red shroud, but a pure white linen robe, which looked like a funeral. Seeing the sadness and suppressed emotions he showed, which were even corroding the bark and grass around him, Qin Shi couldn't help but guess, could it be that he is Gu Zai's closest relative, a filial son? Thinking in this way, Qin Shi's plan to take the initiative was aborted. When Chen Mo turned his attention to him, Qin Shi knew that even if he attacked again, there would be no sneak attack effect, so he simply dispersed the already formed magic model and waited for Chen Mo's explanation. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Chen Mo deliberately changed into this filial son outfit, of course, not out of remembrance and sincere feelings for his cheap master. This is to create a reputation as a filial disciple in the Blood Clothes sect. Although reputation is a hollow thing in the Blood Robe sect and is worthless, Chen Mo does not want to be labeled as a traitor to the master and ancestors, a star of destiny, or big devil. So, on some issues that do not involve principles, he tries to choose a way that is more conducive to creating a good person image. At this moment, wouldn't it be best to pretend to be Gu Zai's most beloved disciple and most filial disciple and inherit the position of the 19th generation leader of the Gu Xiao lineage in a reasonable and legal manner? Anyway, Gu Zai's dead, and no one knows about the dark history of traitor to the master and ancestors. Isn't it okay for Chen Mo to scribble on the black and white words? Intentionally lowering his voice and with bloodshot eyes, Chen Mo uttered a hoarse, wailing voice, "Senior brother Qin, it's not that I stole the position of the vain master. It's the master's last wish, and he named me to inherit the position. And over the past few years, the master has loved and cared for me the most. I can't disobey the master's order, so I have to do this." As he spoke, Chen Mo used the dream snake to fabricate an illusory scene of Gu Zai leaving a will. On it was the second half of the modified will, which read, "If my disciple Chen Mo advances to the magical power period, the matter of Yan Qingyi's decision to be the vain master will be written off, and my beloved disciple Chen Mo will inherit my mantle and carry forward my Gu grass lineage." Anyway, Gu Zai was dead, and the only tree spirit who knew the truth of the will had also died. The so-called truth became a little girl in Chen Mo's hands, who could be dressed up by him and manipulated however he wanted. With his outfit of a filial son and a great filial son, the people present could not help but believe it. Chen Mo maintained a slightly choked tone and apologized to Qin Shi. "To be honest, it was because senior brother Qin left too quickly. When the guardian tree spirit reacted, I was the only one left here, So senior brother Qin missed the second half of the master's last words, and his work was in vain. As if to comfort Qin Shan, Chen Mo bent down and picked up Yan Qingyi's head from the ground, brushed off the dust on it, and said to Qin Shan, "To be honest, a Kainilan vassal king's head is still worth some contribution points of the sect. In order not to let senior brother Qin work in vain, I will give my own contribution points, plus the sect's reward, to senior brother, as a small apology." Chen Mo's performance was reasonable, legal, affectionate and righteous. Even in a famous and upright sect, it was impeccable. Qin Sha looked gloomy and couldn't find a reason to criticize Chen Mo for a while. Unable to express his resentment, Qin Sha laughed in anger. "It turns out that I, Qin, was unreasonable and took Yan Qingyi's head, but I became the wrong one." A strong spiritual pressure rose from Qin Sha's body, blowing the lawn carefully taken care of by the disciples of the Gukeo lineage into pieces. Chen Mo also saw that Qin Sha was not giving up. In the demon sect, everything, in the end, had to be decided by the size of the fist. But although this is the truth, Chen Mo still has to do a good job of face-saving. He pretended to be calm, and his voice became tough, questioning, "Master, the 7th day has not passed yet. If you continue to make trouble here, Qin Sha, are you bullying my Gukeo lineage?" Qin Sha had no reason to question the legitimacy of Chen Mo's inheritance of the Gukeo lineage leader, so he simply stopped pretending to be a good person and said directly, "This position of Gukeo lineage leader can only be mine. No matter what you say, you have to hand it over today, whether you want to or not. Then come and try whether my Gukeo lineage's unique magic is powerful." Chapter 246, Divine Power. With a wonderful performance, Chen Mo easily portrayed himself as a filial son disciple who obeyed the master's will and inherited the position of the vain master, firmly occupying the moral high ground. As for Qin Sha, he became a big villain who took advantage of the death of the strongest person in the Gugrass vein and came to seize the throne of the vain master. The difference was immediately judged. In this way, even in the demon sect, which only cares about interests and not right and wrong, the onlookers couldn't help but lean towards the victim Chen Mo. Just as in history, the world looked down on Zhao Mao who bullied orphans and widows to get to the top. In a word, even if they are in the demon sect, practitioners generally want to associate with fellow disciples with positive reputation and evil behavior order. After all, this kind of principled good people do not need to be guarded against, and it is easier to play dirty. Being in the dark, but not everyone wants the people around them to be a group of demons who kill people and steal treasures at will. Therefore, Chen Mo, who was listening to all directions, found that the public opinion around him inevitably shifted to himself, especially the key training disciples who had been in the demon sect for a short time. They had too little experience and were easily confused by the appearance of things. They looked at Qin Sha with a hint of hostility. Even among the magic cultivators in the supernatural power period, some people looked at Qin Sha coldly, as if they were dissatisfied with his ugly eating. Of course, Chen Mo also knew that the people around him were not all idiots who believed everything they heard. They must have some doubts about his whitewashing remarks, but these were all minor matters. As long as he could save face, it would be fine. Now, through today's incident, a persona of respecting teachers and respecting morality has been established. As for more good reputation, Chen Mo did not expect it. Qin Sha also felt the subtle changes in the attitudes of the people around him, but he had been immersed in the Tao for many years, so he would not be affected by the views of the world, not to mention that most of them were still ants in the key training period. Looking at Chen Mo with a sinister look, Qin Sha sneered, "You are not hoping that someone will do justice for you, are you? Don't dream. In the demon sect, who cares about such trivial matters? Due to the decree of the Supreme Lord, the vain masters, deacons and even the sect masters are not allowed to form cliques and factions. Therefore, even the most powerful late-stage magic master cannot expand his influence in the sect by influencing the selection of vain masters, or even erode the resource share of weak branches. They will not intervene to help Chen Mo. As for the kind-hearted and brave people, they have long been extinct in the blood-clothed sect. Qin Sha has been in the sect for a long time and thinks he has seen through Chen Mo's tricks. He tries to directly reveal the truth and shatter his extravagant hopes, so as to establish a psychological advantage in the subsequent battle. This is a battle between masters of the magic cultivators in the magical period. Before the magic flew, all kinds of open and hidden arrows were flying everywhere. Chen Mo was too lazy to talk nonsense with Qin Sha. He was wearing a white dress that fluttered in the wind, which made his image of a filial son more pure. He looked at Qin Shi coldly and warned him, "Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of my deceased master, so that you will know how powerful my Gugrass lineage is." In order to establish his prestige in the sect and prevent people from looking down on him, the new lineage master, Chen Mo, directly used all his Qi Yuan, wanting to defeat Qin Shi with a crushing force. Woo 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 woo, a melodious but mysterious low hum came slowly from behind Chen Mo, lingering around him, and with invisible sound, it formed an illusory and blurred light. It seemed that at this moment, the boundary between sound and light and darkness was completely distorted. Chen Mo was in it, and his figure became more and more blurred, and he even felt a sense of transcendence that did not exist in reality. If there were ancient alchemists present, they would definitely be able to feel a faint breath of the dream world. Spiritual communication, this is Chen Mo's innate magical power. When a cultivator in the magical power stage successfully advances, he will form a unique innate magic method, called magical power, which can be used as if it were an instinct, and the power, consumption of Qi Yuan and Shen Yuan are much lower than ordinary magic. The best among them, under the deduction and construction of various magic masters, have even been transformed into classic magic models of various attributes, providing more magic options for practitioners of the same level or even in the Qi training stage. The innate magic method that Chen Mo obtained is called spiritual communication, using God as a guide, inspiration from the dream world, and understanding of worldly affairs is spiritual communication. This is the interpretation that automatically emerged in Chen Mo's heart when the innate magical power was formed. The condensed text made him more and more clear about his future path. Keep climbing on the path of the alchemist. Spiritual communication gives me the ability to perceive the dream world more easily. Isn't it the most coveted innate magical power by all those who choose the path of alchemy throughout the ages? This was Chen Mo's first reaction, completely ignoring the danger and unpredictability of the dream world itself. In fact, he was lucky. Since innate magical powers have almost no possibility of being generated by directional guidance, 10,000 practitioners may form 10,000 innate magical powers. A big forest has all kinds of birds. Weird, useless, and disgusting innate magical powers can be said to be everywhere. Those who are born with water spirit veins have the innate magical power of burning fire body. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Once in a hot and dry area, the body will catch fire, and the blazing flames cannot be extinguished at all, resulting in half the effort when releasing water magic. In the end, they have to switch to the fire spiritual vein that they almost gave up, and the speed of practice and combat power have dropped significantly. There is also the innate magical power of being able to eat as a blessing, which can be called the reincarnation of gluttony. It can continuously devour spiritual materials, secular grains, and the flesh and blood of fierce beasts. But whether it is the nutrition or the drugs, it is impossible to absorb the slightest. It is like eating free food, and even the weight does not increase by a small gram. The innate magical power of one breath 10,000 miles is terrifying. It can easily cross thousands of miles, from one end of the subcontinent to the other end of the subcontinent. Even the spiritual desert cannot stop the displacement of the body. However, at the moment when this innate magical power ends, the caster's body will collapse into blood clots under the huge spatial pressure. In this way, the owner does not have the courage to use one breath 10,000 miles. In addition, there are various unreliable innate magical powers, such as life and death are destined, random magic, one dream for 100 years. All these have led to polarization in the choice and use of innate magical powers by the cultivators in the magical power period. Some people do not use them at all, just as if they do not exist, while others use them very frequently, perfectly integrating them with a learned magic system, and their combat power and cultivation are rising steadily. Chen Mo has the magical power of psychic communication, so he makes full use of it and applies it to daily fighting and cultivation. At this time, he used it to simulate a trace of dream world breath that he had sensed, creating a sense of ethereal body and affecting Qin Shi's perception. In terms of confusing ability, it is no less than many Yingxing magic. The most rare thing is that since the records of the dream world are almost extinct on the west coast, with Qin Shi's knowledge, he only thought it was a side door magic, and responded in a conventional way. Under the information gap, the opportunity for Chen Mo to yin him has greatly increased. As soon as his consciousness came into contact with this layer of hazy light, he fell into trance. Qin Shi was so scared that he quickly retracted his consciousness, fearing that Chen Mo would follow the clues and hurt his soul. Qin Shi was still in a state of fear, and he did not dare to underestimate Chen Mo because of his youth. His vigilance was already raised to the highest level. Chapter 247 Reputation. Qin Shi took out a bronze hourglass and turned the bottom plate carrying the white sand upside down. Tiny grains of white sand dripped down along the narrow gap between the upper and lower layers. Tick tick tick, the passage of time was clearly audible, but in Chen Mo's ears, it was a different kind of harshness. The invisible sound waves pierced his eardrum like sharp thorns. The hazy light formed by the spiritual communication, magical power could block the prying of the divine consciousness, but it could not block the vibration of the sound waves. Chen Mo touched his right ear and felt a warm blood flow. Drip. The host was disturbed by the sound waves, and the soft tissue of the ear was slightly injured. It's not a big deal. There is no need to use defensive spells. Please continue to execute the established battle plan. Dream Snake, go. Chen Mo pointed his right hand at Qin Shi, who was manipulating the hourglass, and a black shadow jumped out from the cuffs of Chen Mo's white linen clothes. On the west coast, the dream snake is a rare monster. In order to avoid being discovered by others, Chen Mo deliberately coated it with a layer of dense ash, dyeing all the scales on its body gray and black. Only the secret potion could wash it back to its original appearance. Feeling the faint breath of the dream world, the dream snake became more active. It opened its mouth and sucked, and its body instantly expanded. Then, a pair of sparkling eyes turned into purple crystals and stared at Qin Shi not far away. Qin Shi, who was constantly injecting ki into the hourglass talisman, felt a warning sign in his heart. Without thinking, he turned the hourglass upside down again and placed it horizontally on his chest. The sound waves that continued to spread outward suddenly gathered in the 3 inches around him, forming a vague transparent ripple cover. At the same time, Qin Shi used his prepared magic to absorb enough earth spirit energy, and launched it directly below Chen Mo. A series of thick earth yellow chains broke through the grass and wrapped around Chen Mo's position, covering the whole area. Since he couldn't lock Chen Mo's exact position through his spiritual sense, Qin Shi didn't make any useless efforts to search for the target, and directly launched an indiscriminate attack to see where he could run. He believed, even if Chen Mo was gifted in advance to the magical power stage at a young age, the time was still short, and this kind of weird magic would definitely not last long. It would consume a little more energy to force him out. However, a weird scene appeared. The chains that soared into the sky pierced the space where the blurred light was without any hindrance, but there was no sound of ping-pong, and there was no bright blood. Qin Shi's heart skipped a beat, knowing that he had been bewitched by Chen Mo. He thought to himself that he was in trouble, and quickly activated the bronze hourglass to add layers of sound wave protection to his body. Visible ripples appeared in the air, and Qin Shi's figure became blurred. Due to the bewitching of psychic communication, he had already lost the initiative, thinking that the more he moved, the more mistakes he made, so he simply defended in place and responded to all changes with the same attitude. Will it work to hide in the turtle shell? Qin Shi's judgment was correct. Chen Mo had taken advantage of the previous opportunity to touch his side. If he had been in a hurry to move just now, he would only suffer a loss due to his unstable footing. Unfortunately, no matter how smart the choice was, it could not change his fate of being penetrated by Chen Mo's turtle shell. Chen Mo gently placed his right hand on this layer of turtle shell, causing the ripples on its surface to change in a spiral shape. After a while, a small hole the size of a long was revealed. Ling. The attack is complete. The hole will exist for 3 seconds. Please hurry up. Without Chen Mo's urging, the dream snake, which had been eager to try, swished and drilled into the small hole. The hole repaired itself and closed quickly. Qin Shi slapped the hourglass, and the sound waves expanded outward, ejecting Chen Mo. However, the dream snake, which was in the same protective membrane with him, had no way to expel it. Chen Mo's figure kept flying back, but a smile of success appeared on his face. In a closed space, the power of the dream snake will only be stronger. Qin Shi also felt something was wrong, because his vision was already shrouded by a black mist. He thought it was a hallucinogenic or toxic gas, which was thrown into the protective membrane by Chen Mo along the hole, so Qin Shi subconsciously closed the pores and mouth and nose around his body, trying to isolate the invasion of external gases. However, as time passed, his vision was still dark, and holding his breath was obviously ineffective. Qin Shi secretly thought that it was not good, and had to release the sound wave shield formed by the hourglass, trying to get out of this space filled with unknown toxins. As for the consequences of losing protection and being attacked by Chen Mo, he could not care so much. Ling. It has been confirmed that Qin Shi has no intention of using his innate magical power. It is judged that the possibility that his innate magical power is useless is 96%. The host can let go and make a final decision. The reason why the dream snake was allowed to go first and interfere with Qin Shi's 5 senses was to prevent him from making a desperate move. The innate magical power of a cultivator in the magical power stage is often an important trump card that can reverse the situation in an instant. After hearing the scientific analysis of the chip, Chen Mo no longer held back. With a low shout, the rich yin spiritual energy, mixed with a blurred light that had not yet dissipated, condensed in the joints of his fists. From 100 steps away, he punched Qin Shi with both fists. Boom! The latest novel is first published on the 69th Book Forum. The dull sound of gas explosion resounded throughout the Gugrass lineage's residence. Qin Shi's whole body, as if hit head-on by a giant hammer, flew backwards for hundreds of meters, knocking down more than 10 ancient trees in a row. What a pity, such a good landscape plant was ruined by you. The Gugrass lineage's residence is a quiet lawn, plus a circle of dense forest outside that has been formed for who knows how many years. Due to Qin Shi's retreat, an ugly scar was plowed out in the green. When Qin Shi retreated, the hourglass in his hand also flew backwards. As the chip expected, he did not use his innate magical power to turn the tables, so when the dream snake took advantage of the opportunity, his soul fell into coma. In public, Chen Mo couldn't just go up and finish off the enemy. He could only walk to Qin Shi's side, take a storage bag from his waist, and said loudly, "You destroyed the base of my Gukeo lineage. These things are compensation." Then, Chen Mo casually pointed to a few other disciples of the branch lineage who were watching, and signaled them to throw Qin Shi out of the spiritual vein and not let him see it again. These little guys in the key training period naturally dared not disobey. At the same time, Chen Mo also concluded from the odd expressions of the onlookers, today's performance and the shock of strength have already played a role in establishing his reputation as the 19th master of the Gukeo lineage. From now on, in the blood-clothed sect, the name of Chen Mo will gradually become synonymous with the devil. Everything is different. Looking around this familiar environment with the mentality of the master, Chen Mo muttered to himself. Chapter 248 The Master's Demon Sect Development Methodology. Qin Shi was like a scabby dog with a broken spine, carried by several branch disciples and taken away from the Gukeo lineage. Of course, all the valuables on his body were taken away by Chen Mo, which was the price of provoking him. Since the winners are the losers, the onlookers did not stand up to defend Qin Shi. The drama of the battle between the leaders of the veins ended in just 3 or 4 rounds, leaving many key training disciples confused. But in fact, even several deacons and other vein leaders of the supernatural power stage did not see through the mystery of Chen Mo's final double punch and defeating Qin Shi in one blow. It shouldn't be. Even if this 100 steps divine fist, which combines the power of the physical body, has become more powerful and powerful through the aura amplification of the fist wind, and its power has increased several times, Qin Shi's physical quality is still good, so it doesn't make sense that he can't even withstand a mere blow. No, not far away, a vein master looked puzzled and kept shaking his head to overturn one speculation after another. This pulse master, who was already old and had gray hair, still had the same sharp eyesight as when he was young. Through Qin Shi's on-the-spot performance, he tasted a little trick. There must be other reasons for his coma. This was indeed the case. The reason why Chen Mo was able to win with one blow was that the dream snake affected Qin Shi's soul, making him unable to recondense the protective spell in the first time, so that he was hit hard by Chen Mo. Unfortunately, the strangeness of the dream snake and the psychic, magical power can only be seen by practitioners who are immersed in the way of alchemists from the words of the two sides. This pulse master thought hard for a long time, but still did not get a convincing answer. Forget it, I don't want to think about it anymore, just ask this young Taoist friend. The onlooker, the vein master, controlled the floating clouds and slowly descended to the side of Chen Mo. He didn't care that he was busy looking through Qin Shi's storage bag, and greeted him in a familiar manner. Congratulations to my junior brother for inheriting the last wish of your master Guzai and becoming the 19th generation vein master of the Gugrass vein. I am Zhongling Dao, and my junior brother's vein is a neighbor. My Minglong vein is only 3 hills away from here. I hope my junior brother will come and visit more often in the future." Zhang Lingdao smiled, squeezed out thick lines of old age, but he didn't mean to take advantage of his age at all. It can be said that he gave Chen Mo enough face. This also reflects from the side. The practice world of the jungle does not distinguish between the first time to hear the Tao, the old and the young, and speaks with strength. Since Chen Mo has advanced to the stage of supernatural power and defeated Qin Shan with overwhelming force, proving that he is worthy of the combat power of the initial stage of supernatural power, then he is a demon cultivator of the supernatural power stage, and is on the same level as the deacons and branch masters of the sect, and they are called brothers. Zhang Lingdao has been a disciple for more than 100 years and has a rich experience, so he can take advantage of Chen Mo's verbal senior brother. In the cultivation world, only the closest relationship between direct disciples will not deteriorate with the changes in the cultivation of both the master and the disciple. The master is still the master, and the disciple is always the disciple. Ling. Old fellow is being too attentive for no reason. Please be careful of his tricks and don't disclose the information of the alchemist and the dream snake. For a stranger like Zhang Lingdao who came up directly, the chip's defensive reminder naturally sounded at the first time. Chen Mo did not want to hide a smiling person. While secretly alert, he also politely replied, "So it turns out that you are the famous leader of the Minglong vein. Senior brother Zhang, I'm so sorry for your disrespect. This is the first time I'm the leader of this vein. I'm not very familiar with the sex affairs. I hope you can give me some advice." Everyone carried the fancy sedan, and Zhang Lingdao naturally agreed. However, in the subsequent communication, he tried to get Chen Mo's cultivation method, his relationship with Guzai, and whether he knew the inside story of his death. He also cleverly disguised himself as a warm-hearted senior brother who was concerned about the new vein leader. However, this kind of cliché with hidden secrets was useless before the interpretation of the chip's words. Chen Mo, under his reminders from time to time, cleverly avoided many questions involving his own secrets, which made Zhang Lingdao's plan to find out the details of the new Pulse Master fail. On the other hand, Zhang Lingdao, under Chen Mo's persuasion, revealed many points to pay attention to when serving as a Pulse Master in the Blood Robe sect. The resource share delegated by the sect is the fat meat that countless magical powers are eyeing. The distribution of benefits is extremely subtle. Maybe if you ask for more, you will offend a deacon or Pulse Master whose share has been reduced, and you will create an enemy in vain. Therefore, when participating in the division of spoils, you should be careful in what you say and do. A certain deacon in the sect had a grudge against a Pulse Master for stealing his wife in his early years. When you need to find any of the two, you must keep a certain distance, so as not to let the other misunderstand your friendship with him and be on the other's list of enemies and friends. Every 10 years, the divine power cultivators have to complete a certain proportion of voluntary tasks for the sect. How to select those that are short in time, low in risk, and high in benefits? There are the following considerations. Zhang Lingdao was unknowingly tricked by Chen Mo, who outlined for him the development methodology of the Blood Robe sect for the divine power cultivators for free. As the backbone, the vein master or the deacon, rights and obligations coexist, and the amount of sweat paid will be proportionally rewarded. Compared with the treatment of the lower level of the inner and outer sects and the direct disciples of the branch veins, it is much better, and it can be regarded as a master of the Blood Robe sect. Although this title must first be enjoyed by the Supreme Elder Yan Qingyi, and then shared with hundreds of deacons, vein masters, and the main and deputy sect masters of the same realm of cultivation. Brother Chen, speaking of which, Uncle Ren has been in seclusion for many years. He doesn't see anyone except the Blood Sect Master on weekdays. Therefore, we, the vein masters who are not very powerful, must build a good relationship with the sect master's veins. Even those disciples in the key training stage cannot be easily ignored. After a long talk, Zhang Lingdao and Chen Mo became closer, and even changed their address to the more intimate brother Chen. However, as he talked, Zhang Lingdao, whose lips were dry, tasted something wrong. It turned out that he didn't understand Chen Mo's bottom line and the reason for defeating Qin Shan, but he was half coaxed and half tricked by him to tell him a lot of experiences on how to be a qualified vein master in the sect. It's a loss. Although these things are not worth a few spirit stones, they can help the new vein master avoid many detours. They can't be measured with mere spirit stones. Zhang Lingdao felt that he was being tricked by Chen Mo, and felt unwilling to suffer a loss. Looking at Chen Mo, he couldn't help but feel a little resentful, and his interest in talking was reduced a lot. Most of what he had revealed unconsciously as the leader of the Moth Vein was the blood and tears lesson he had learned since he entered the senior management of the Blood Robe sect. When you reach the stage of supernatural power, become a Vein leader or a deacon, you are already qualified to share the annual income of the Blood Robe sect, including the annual output of resource points, the authority to mobilize the resources of the sect, and even the battle plan and spoils distribution of looting the righteous, alien races and the Kyanitan Empire. Once you are on the Blood Robe sect's spoils distribution platform, being a person and personal strength are both indispensable. It doesn't mean that you have to be good at dancing with long sleeves, but you can't offend people everywhere, so that when the benefits are distributed, because people hate you and ghosts worry about you, the benefits are not proportional to the efforts, and there is a certain loss. Zhang Linggao had made such a mistake before. When he was young, he was not given a lot of sect resources, so he was always wasting time in the early stage of supernatural powers. In recent years, he has been reflecting on his young and ignorant past, while thinking about how to gather a group of newly appointed Vein Masters and Deacons. Fortunately, there were one or two who waved flags and shouted when speaking on the spoils distribution platform. Chen Mo, it was Zhang Linggao who took the initiative to approach him because he saw that he was young and easy to fool. Unfortunately, Zhang Linggao's ulterior motives were completely cracked by the chip. According to what Zhang Linggao said, Chen Mo also let the chip verify the sect intelligence collected over the years with all the matters in the Vein Master's seal, and came to a conclusion that was almost right. In the Blood Robe sect, when personal cultivation is not enough to suppress all dissent, you have to follow the trend, enjoy the benefits of the general trend, and cooperate and compete with other demons of the same level. Look at Guzai and Zukai Shao, they are living examples. Both of them are in the late stage of supernatural power, but the latter, the leader of the Zhuai sect, far exceeds Guzai in terms of sect power and resource allocation. His voice in the sect is second to none, second only to the Supreme Elder Ren Yanqing in the condensation pill stage. But then again, if the master really advances to the condensation pill stage, the situation will be reversed in an instant, and Zukai and Chao will not be able to compare. The lessons learned from the past have enabled Chen Mo to grasp the essence of being the leader of a branch vein, to strike a suitable balance between the power of the sect and personal cultivation. Neither can you slow down the pace of impacting the condensation pill stage because you are obsessed with making decisions on the affairs of the sect and the coveting of the power of the sect, nor can you ignore all the affairs of the sect because you are devoted to the Tao, resulting in a reduction in the resource allocation of the Gukeo lineage. The subtleties in it are worth Chen Mo's careful experience, so that the chip can design a feasible and profitable maximization plan. Thank you, Senior Brother Zhang, for sharing your experience. It has given me some understanding of how to be a qualified branch leader. I am very grateful. In the future, we should increase our exchanges. Although these experiences were obtained by Chen Mo's trickery, he could not tell the truth. He had to save face and treat today's cordial conversation as a heart-to-heart exchange between the two of them. Therefore, when Chen Mo noticed that Zhang Linggao was unwilling to say more, he showed a sincere smile, took the initiative to end the topic, and bowed to him to show his gratitude. Having suffered a loss that was not to be described as big, Zhang Linggao knew that he could not do anything to Chen Mo, let alone ask for spiritual stones as compensation. He could only curse Chen Mo in his heart, but he had to show a gratified smile of an old senior. That's right, we will have to communicate more in the future. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. But in his heart, Zhang Linggao was determined, never associate with the cunning Chen Mo, so as not to be fooled by this little devil who is experienced in human relations and loses his sense of direction. When driving the wandering cloud away, Zhang Linggao even thought, how can Chen Mo have such a mature mind at such a young age? Recalling the previous process of trying to trick him but being tricked, Zhang Linggao felt that the person opposite him was completely a cunning person who was older than himself. Watching Zhang Linggao leave with a smile, but the speed of the surging Qi Yuan in his body was somewhat accelerated, Chen Mo could see that this old devil noticed something was wrong, and after coming to his senses from the trap, he no longer made too many suggestions even to invite himself to join the small group he organized. Chen Mo did not thank Zhang Linggao with substantial spiritual materials and spiritual stones to save the opportunity to join the small group he organized. He let him go away, his eyes became cold, and he thought to himself, Zhonglingdao's small group is just a few bottom-level Vein Masters and Deacons who keep each other warm. They don't have much power when the sect distributes it. Maybe they can only get a little more ordinary spiritual stones every year, which is of no benefit to me. It's better not to join, it's easier. Although Rendanking Taishang enforced the sect rule that the magic heads in the magical period below were not allowed to form small groups in order to consolidate his rule, he could not completely prevent everyone below from forming alliances. Generally speaking, as long as the demons below do not directly use the strength of their own branches to encroach on other branches and highly concentrate part of the sect's power and resource shares, Rendanking will turn a blind eye even if he hears a little bit of rumors. Therefore, small groups like Zhonglingdao still have a certain living space. What's the harm in joining a small group of weak people? Instead, I will be wasted precious time for cultivation by these petty gains from personal relationships. If I don't join Zhonglingdao and his gang, as long as I am strong enough, I believe that the other branch masters and deacons will not dare to snatch the resource shares from me. Isn't Guxi like this? When has the resources that the Gugrass lineage should have been short of? In a sense, Chen Mo intends to follow the old path of his master Guxi, that is, he has no desire or demand in the distribution of power in the sect, but he also firmly stated, every year, the resource share that falls to the Gugrass lineage cannot be reduced by a single spiritual stone. Whoever dares to stretch out his dog paw to take something that does not belong to him, then rely on strength to chop off this dog paw with his own hands. In this way, Chen Mo not only ensured that the resource share of the Gukeo lineage would not be encroached by others through the legal process of profit distribution, but also had enough time for cultivation, without having to deal with the miscellaneous affairs of the sect. Even the task of instructing the disciples of the branch lineage was now completely abandoned by him by dismissing the disciples. At this point, Chen Mo had a clear understanding of the future career plan of the Gukeo lineage leader, and even looked forward to it. When I advance to the condensation dance stage one day, Rendanking will die due to the limitation of his lifespan, and the entire Zuai sect will become my one-man show. In the end, power and resources still come from personal strength. As long as Chen Mo's fist is strong enough, even if the Zuai sect changes its surname to Chen, it is not impossible. After the song ended, with the departure of Zhonglingdao, only Chen Mo was left in the Gukeo lineage station, and there was a lawn and dense forest that was ruined by the aftermath of the battle. Looking at the mess, Chen Mo did not plan to clean up the area. Anyway, with a unique concentration of spiritual energy in this spiritual vein, flowers and plants absorb the essence of the sun and the moon. Even if they cannot become spirits, it is no problem for them to grow faster. It only takes 3 months and a half, and new weeds and saplings will fill the gaps left by the fight, and the Guxi cave, which has changed its name to Chen, will be covered by the shadows of trees again. I didn't expect that even Lu's Henner would leave tactfully, otherwise I would have to throw her out myself. When returning to the cave, Chen Mo thought of his former junior sister who was always clinging to him, and smiled inadvertently. The road of cultivation is bumpy, and he has no time to be distracted by love. A mere beauty will only mess up his mind and slow down his advancement. It's this once-in-a-decade voluntary task of the Vein Master. It's not a trivial matter, and it needs to be planned carefully. As he walked, Chen Mo took out a Vein Master seal. At the bottom of the crystal jade, a random voluntary task emerged, which was guarding the border of the demon gate for 10 years. Next to it, there was a symbol that said change task, which would allow Chen Mo to randomly choose another voluntary task until he was satisfied. As a Pulse Master, I have a lot more freedom than when I was a key training disciple. There are many tasks to choose from, and I don't have to be forced to fight for my life in the name of the sect's call. 4,000 words, put together. Chapter 249 Border. A few months later, at the border of the demon sect, in a vast wilderness bordering Kayanitun Yaozhao, a traveler was walking alone and calmly on the barren land without any grass. It was Chen Mo. He tightened the mask wrapped around his neck, took a deep breath, and muttered to himself, the familiar low concentration of spiritual energy, the free spiritual energy factors of the 5 elements, the number is less than 1% of the worst place in the sect, not to mention the more rare yin spiritual energy and thunder spiritual energy. The degree of its badness is unmatched even in the subcontinent. It seems that this place is not far from the Demon Cloud Pass. The Demon Cloud Pass is the bridgehead used by the Blood-Clothed sect to attack the Kayanitian Empire. It borders the border of Yaozhao. The concentration of spiritual energy in the world is very limited due to the terrain restrictions and the influence of dragon energy. Practitioners in this area feel suffocated like fish leaving the running water. In addition, a large number of ambitious demon cubs and demon heads who want to make a fortune in the Kyanitian Empire have gathered in the Demon Cloud Pass. According to the records of the sect, this giant war talisman even flew into the air in a large-scale invasion 100 years ago, breaking through the layers of defenses laid by the Kyanitian border army in Yaozhou and driving directly to Yezhou, which is less than 1,000 miles away from the heart of the Kyanitian Empire. Then, there was a catastrophe in March that was recorded by the Kyanitian historian as a demon disaster. The Demon Cloud Pass suspended in the air opened all its doors, releasing the supernatural power and key training practitioners who covered the sky and the sun, breaking up into small pieces and starting to wreak havoc in Yezhou. The most daring of them went all the way east, causing quite a stir in the heart of Kyanitian. As a result, Yezhou, which was positioned as a logistics center and always supported the border Yaozhou defense line, was directly destroyed by the demons who ravaged it for 3 months. With the productivity of the mortal empire, it would take at least 100 years for it to recover. The most direct consequence is that Kangzhou, a cold and bitter place on the border of Kyanitian, which is also on the edge of the demon sect, has lost a lot of its protective power and has become a backyard for demon cultivators to come and go as they please. This is why more than a dozen demon cultivators with early magical powers were able to easily take down the head of the vassal King Yan Qingyi in Kangzhou, and then leave calmly without losing a single person. Looking up, Chen Mo saw a vague brown object in his sight, like a pillar of heaven, standing in the vast wilderness, casting a shadow that brought a huge psychological pressure to people in the distance. The Demon Cloud Pass, the demonic energy is the cloud, and the support is the pass. I didn't expect that the demon sect that believes in personal strength would have such a giant war machine that can only be fully activated by the combined efforts of tens of millions of people. Chen Mo couldn't help but smile knowingly when he thought of the scene of the Demon Cloud Pass taking off, led by the inner and outer disciples of each demon sect, plus a group of people from vassal forces, countless scattered demons of different composition and temperament, in the Qiyuan injection room of the Demon Cloud Pass, stick to the posts, and inject Qiyuan at the same time, which eventually gave the Demon Cloud Pass enough power to soar into the sky and violently tear apart all mortal defenses. I don't know if it will take off again while I am in charge of the Demon Cloud Pass. Chen Mo has been thinking about the Feng Shui treasure land in the Kyanitian Empire for a long time. Even though he has advanced to the supernatural power stage now, there are still many specialties in the resources selected at the beginning, the Yan Qingyi, which is beneficial to Chen Mo's realm improvement. If we rely on the strength of the sect members in the early stage to cross the layers of dragon energy barriers on the border of Yaozhou, we can still save a lot of trouble. Chen Mo checked the chip's analysis of Kyanitian dragon energy and was a little disappointed. Due to the lack of dragon energy samples, the research has not made substantial progress. Although it can shield the detection of dragon energy to a certain extent, it is still not 100% successful. If you encounter a high-quality dragon energy talisman or the direct bloodline of the Dragon Emperor, there is still a possibility of revealing flaws. In the heartland of Kyanitian, where everyone is hostile, once Chen Mo's identity is exposed, it is hard to say that he can escape back to the blood-clothed sect 100%. Towards the Demon Cloud Pass, Chen Mo walked all the way. Although he was walking on foot, his speed was not slow at all. With a lift of his foot and a step, he covered a distance of 100 meters. It seemed that the ground under his feet was shortened by his magical power, shrinking the earth into an inch. The place where Chen Mo walked a second ago even left a faint afterimage. Of course, in order to achieve such a ghostly pace, Chen Mo did not use a single bit of Qiyuan, but relied entirely on the strength of his physical body, and at most used some of the essence of martial arts to maintain the balance of his body while maintaining the forward speed. In a harsh spiritual environment, precious Qiyuan should be saved as much as possible. Chen Mo always kept in mind the self-cultivation of the demon head, and reminded himself, the enemy is not only the Kyanitian Wuzu opposite, but also the fellow demons around him. You must always maintain a minimum of 30% of the Qiyuan reserve. Gradually approaching the black shadow in the distance, sparse human figures appeared on the wasteland. Looking at their dress, they all wore a gray or light black windbreaker, which wrapped their bodies tightly. At the same time, a faint smell of blood permeated from the sleeves. Ordinary people could tell at a glance that they were not serious practitioners. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. The destination of these people, like Chen Mo, was the nearby Demon Cloud Pass. However, on the way back, they did not even nod to each other to greet each other. On the contrary, when they saw someone approaching, they subconsciously moved away and chose another direction that also led to the Demon Cloud Pass. Anyway, as a huge fortress covering an area of 100 acres, the Demon Cloud Pass has more than hundreds of gates open daily. If you deviate slightly from the angle of advance, you can also return to the Demon Cloud Pass. Seeing Chen Mo dressed like a secular traveler, these fellow travelers were not surprised. They just glanced at him coldly and ignored him. As for Chen Mo being a disguised border soldier of the Khianian Empire who wanted to sneak into the Demon Cloud Pass, these demons were the first to disbelieve. A mere mortal can only rely on dragon energy and geographical advantages to stop the eastward invasion of the cultivation world on the west coast. Whether it is the running dog of the locking Immortal Division or the rat of the Tingfang prison, if they dare to come to the Demon Cloud Pass, they will only end up with their souls extracted and their spirits refined. Since the people he met on the road were all in the key training stage, no one could see through Chen Mo's disguise. As for his secret spiritual awareness of these people, they did not react at all. The average cultivation level is the 5th level of key training, and they have instant magics such as talismans or talismans, and they also have a strong martial arts cultivation. According to the analysis of the breath, each of them has a lot of names in their hands, from the Khianian border army, and from similar key training practitioners. Seeing the leopard in the cage, Chen Mo also understood the strength of the bottom-level key training practitioners who made up the Demon Cloud Pass, not to mention the potential that has not yet been transformed into actual combat power, such as cultivation talent. These key training practitioners are all the best among the bottom-level practitioners, generally at the upper-middle level of the same class, especially with strong adaptability and adaptability. If you don't have certain skills, you can't adapt to the low spiritual or even non-spiritual environment on the border of the Khianian Empire. After staying in this harsh environment for a long time, although the speed of cultivation advancement will inevitably slow down, the ability to finally manipulate Qi Yuan and the sensitivity to spiritual fluctuations will definitely be greatly improved. In this way, when facing an enemy with the same strength in a place with abundant spiritual energy, this experienced practitioner can control more spiritual energy and perform more powerful spells. Overall, the intersection of the two forces is a good place to hone one's skills. Chapter 250 Demonic Cloud Pass. It was the right decision to accept this voluntary task. After discovering this unexpected surprise, Chen Mo was in a good mood. He continued to feel the flow of spiritual factors in the surrounding environment. He felt that his perception of this kind of essential thing for practitioners became more and more delicate. Calculating the time, it has been quite a while since Chen Mo received the legacy of the Gugrass lineage. After leaving the Guru breeding farm to Lao Wang and his son, Chen Mo directly locked himself in the cave of the Vein Master to consolidate his realm and lived a leisurely life as a hands-off shopkeeper. Until he completely consolidated the realm of the magical power period that he had just been promoted to, no one in the sect came to find Chen Mo. Not to mention the Taishuang Rendanking who is devoted to Taoism, even the sect master Zhu Qianshao did not ask him to discuss the development of the Gugrass lineage and his personal practice plan. As for the rest of the people in the sect, no one came to find Chen Mo. In this way, he lived a secluded life for several months. Until recently, he accepted the Vein Master task of guarding the border of the demon sect for 10 years and walked out of the cave. The closer he got to the Demon Cloud Pass, the clearer the details of the facade of this huge fortress became in Chen Mo's sight. It turned out that the brown facade color that Chen Mo had seen before was the marks left by the dried blood of living creatures. The passage of time and the blowing of rain and snow have turned many of the longest-standing blood marks into deep brown or even black, sticking to the smooth walls of the Demon Cloud Pass in patches. Its facade was rendered in its entirety, except for the towers that stood hundreds of meters high on the walls of the fortress, which still maintained the pure white porcelain color when they were built. There was a clear smell of blood in the air. Needless to say, it was emitted from the outer wall of the Demon Cloud Pass in front of him. I don't know how much blood of Khianian peoples needed to water such a gorgeous painting. Upon first sight, Chen Mo felt that the name of Demon Cloud Pass was very appropriate. These 3 short words conveyed the terrifying and bloody atmosphere of the demonic clouds. It seemed that every time Demon Cloud Pass appeared at the border of Yao Zhao, it would bring eternal nightmares to many mortals. The Demon Cloud Pass is made entirely of bluestone, which has been baked and painted to form its current appearance. It has a low density and can soar into the sky with a little force or infusion of Qi. It is a stone that is very suitable for low altitude and long distance transportation, and the unit cost is not high, making it very suitable for large-scale product manufacturing. However, the fluid design of the Demon Cloud Pass can only score 50 points out of a full 500, because it seriously violates fluid mechanics. It will produce huge wind resistance when gliding at low altitude and high speed. The consumption of key training morale elements as a common power source will increase by 40%, which is not conducive to long-distance combat. The analysis of the chip also explained the reason why the demon sect injured 1,000 enemies and lost 500 of its own people during the expedition to Yezhao 100 years ago. Due to the unscientific anti-mechanical design of the Demon Cloud Pass, the demon cultivators who went on the expedition to Yezhao consumed a large amount of Qi in vain on the way there alone, so that when they scattered and attacked and implemented the Three Lights strategy, they were not on the best condition. They encountered the encirclement and suppression of Kainigan soldiers, and many people died. Due to various factors, the number of the demon sect expeditionary force that gathered at the Demon Cloud Pass at the agreed time to return to the demon sect's sphere of influence was only 50% or 60% of the number when they came. If it was 10% less, they would not even be able to maintain the low-altitude flight of the Demon Cloud Pass. Of course, the results achieved with huge sacrifices were also quite fruitful. The Demon Cloud Pass that fell from the sky poisoned most of the rich land of Yezhao, and completely crippled the logistics supply center on the border of Kainigan and Yaoxiao. During the catastrophe in March, the most evil was the high-level demon sect disciples who were approaching the critical point of advancement. Those who dared to fight in the land of dragon energy were all cultivation madmen who loved spiritual materials more than their lives. They plundered Kainigan's special spiritual materials, which was extremely vicious. In addition to taking away all the mature spiritual materials that could be used as medicine, they even did not let go of the seedlings growing on the side. There were also some crazy demon cultivators who used the blood of warriors to sacrifice their beloved talismans, and specifically targeted soldiers and even constables in major cities in Yezhao, committing numerous bloody cases. As for the large-scale killing methods of poisoning, burning cities, and releasing poisonous insects, these disciples of the demon sect are their strengths. The mortals in Yezhao, not counting those who died directly, were already countless, greatly reducing the war potential of the border areas of Kainigan. This large-scale national war is completely different from the low-level, small-scale battles that Chen Mo has fought with the running dogs of the Locking Immortal Division and the Tingfengjian warriors in the past few years. The degree of cruelty is incomparable. Blood and floating pestles, millions of corpses, are only the most superficial description of the battlefield. The deeper level behind it is the destruction of the mortal families of the Kainigan Empire, and the huge consumption of manpower, material resources, and animal power of this 1,000-year-old empire. Such a loss, even in a peaceful and prosperous year with good weather and good harvests, cannot be recovered without the recuperation of several generations. 80% of the front area of the Demon Cloud Pass has been scanned. A total of 36 towers have been damaged to varying degrees. There are 531 dents over 3 meters deep on the wall, and as many as 1,600 cracks over 5 meters deep at the bottom. Overall, the damage to the Demon Cloud Pass is 45%. It is estimated that there is only one chance for long-distance navigation, and the maximum round-trip mileage does not exceed 500,000 kilometers. It is recommended that the host enter the core formation room of the Demon Cloud Pass and provide more detailed data to help the chip make a more accurate judgment. The chip's assessment of the operating status of the Demon Cloud Pass is not optimistic. Obviously, it was severely damaged in the last 10,000-mile raid, but according to the chip's analysis, the large and small injuries on the facade of the Demon Cloud Pass are just minor problems. With the ability of the weapon refiner, a small team of more than 10 people can repair it in a year or two. Its real trauma comes from the high corrosion of the blue cloudstone that makes up the fortress by the dragon energy. Dragon Qi of various qualities has penetrated into the wall without any holes and merged with a Qingyi stone. Every time the formation is running, the flowing spiritual energy will violently conflict with the spiritual energy contained in the Qingyi stone, causing the internal structure to deteriorate further. There is only one way to restore its performance to its original state, to break down and cut the Qingyi stone piece by piece, and replace all the corroded parts. The amount of work is as huge as rebuilding a demon cloud fortress. I think the wisdom of the decision-makers of the demon sect will definitely not allow it. There is only one opportunity for long-distance flight. It seems that the demon cloud fortress will only be suppressed at this border for the rest of its service life to deter Cayenne and Yao Xiao. The latest novel is first published on the 6th book bar. Through the analysis of the chip, Chen Mo has a general understanding of the future of the demon cloud fortress, and basically gave up the idea of using this aerial fortress to break through the border defense line of Yao Xiao. No hurry, anyway, I have the opportunity to stay in charge for 10 years, and I can always find a way to sneak in. After advancing to the supernatural power stage, Chen Mo already has a lifespan of 500 years. A mere 10 years is worth waiting. According to the practice of the demon sect to go to the Cayenne Empire for a large-scale harvest every 100 years, Chen Mo will always have a day to act with a large army, so his mentality is very good. As he walked, the level 36 gate of the Demon Cloud Pass was in front of him. Chen Mo took out the jade seal representing the master of the Gugrass lineage and stamped it on the closed gate. Since most people gathered at the B-level gate for Kigan practitioners to pass through, Chen Mo, who walked out of the crowd and walked towards the A-level gate, was noticed by many demon cubs who were watching all directions. Among them was a hurried traveler who had met Chen Mo before. He couldn't help but be secretly shocked, thinking about whether he had offended him when he passed by him. Those who can walk through the A-level city gate are all great figures in the supernatural power period. Even in a place with thin spiritual energy, to kill a key cultivator is just as easy as a mortal killing a rabbit. They really didn't expect that a great figure in the supernatural power period would dress so low-key, just like the poor key cultivators below the 6th level, walking entirely on their legs, except that the steps are a little easier. Nothing else is different. There is not even a monster beast for walking. This senior is really. Many people looked at Chen Mo's back and muttered in a low voice, full of incomprehension in their hearts. They had some impression of this strange cultivator who came to the Demon Cloud Pass. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.